The following podcast contains spoilers, adult language, and discussions about two very different episodes.
One good, one not so good.
This is a message from the Office of Emergency Preparedness. Due to the recent crisis, we ask that you remain in your homes. Do not attempt to communicate or interact with the creatures, even if they are people you know.
Lock your doors. Bar your windows. The dead are coming. It's time for Aim for the Head, an all Walking Dead universe podcast. And now, here are your hosts, Diana and Steve.
Hi, and welcome back to Aim for the Head podcast. I'm Diana.
And I'm Steve.
This is podcast number 292, episode 292. And we've got a twofer for 292, a 292 twofer. Oh boy, I didn't even realize that when I wrote it out. Anything to make laughs, anything to enjoy ourselves right now, because, you know, we're going down the shit stream is what we're doing. So first up, we're going to discuss as little as possible the mid-season finale of Fear the Walking Dead. Title of the episode was All I See Is Red. And then we will discuss the series premiere of The Walking Dead Dead City. Title of that episode was Old Acquaintances. So let's jump into Fear first. We'll do our quick thoughts and our, think a good thought about Fear, and we'll do our points, and then we'll do exactly the same setup for Dead City. So I think I went first last week, so why don't you tell our vast listening audience what you thought of this week's Fear the Walking Dead episode.
Yes,
and try not to laugh while you do it. This is serious business, Steve.
I know. Well, I think we're all, pretty serious when it comes to watching Fear, because it's certainly not an enjoyable thing. Just remember, all of the odd episodes you go first, all the even ones I go first, because you started and went first with episode 1. So anyway, so Fear, how, like, when someone has something like creative, they want you to like watch or read or look at it, whatever it is, and it's really, really bad, but like, you're like, you don't want to like just tell them, oh my God, this is like the worst piece of garbage I've ever seen, read, looked at, whatever. And
yes,
so
I'm in theater. I've been forced to watch other people's shit so many times.
And over the years, I've learned the best way to respond when you've really got nothing good to say is this. And this is what if I were looking at, if the knuckleheads were like, hey man, did you watch our mid-season event? What'd you think? I would look at them and I'd go, I thought you guys were very brave. And I'm just gonna leave it at that, because there's, words fail me for just how unwatchable this show is, and just how, and I think the only thing that surprised me about this episode, which I didn't think this was possible, but I just didn't care. I mean, like, you know what I mean? I had, everything that was happening. I'm like, don't care. Oh, this person. Oh, no, don't care. I mean, just nothing, So, much like, Karen, when she left last week, I'm happy for Lenny James that he's finally free.
Yes. And
doesn't have to go through all this garbage. I would love to see him at a show, and maybe not this year, but maybe like let a little time pass, like next year or a year after, and just be like, seriously, how frustrated were you with the crap that they were churning out, and just see what he would say.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's terrible. I mean, there's one redeeming thing in there, the whole thing, and it was a technical thing for me, and that was it. And I hated it. So what about you?
Pretty much the same. And I it's funny, both Dead City and Fear were both available on Thursday night on the app. And I've been joking with Steve this whole half season that what I've been doing is I watch Fear because there are other things I want to watch, but I won't allow myself to like say watch, like the newest like Yellow Jackets episode or something like that. So I won't allow myself to watch the thing I really want to watch until I watch Fear. So sort of like eating your Brussels sprouts before your dessert. So this week I told Steve via text that I was tired of that and that I had my dessert first and watched Dead City first, and then I watched Fear. And man, did I drag my feet on watching Fear. I'm pretty sure I waited until, I think I watched it Saturday. Saturday or Sunday, I can't remember. It doesn't matter because it's crap no matter what day of the week you watch it. So I had no desire to watch it a second time. I will probably get a few factual things wrong with the episode in my assessment, and you know what? I don't care. We joked before we started recording about, is it possible for me to actually do an episode, and we might test this out just for fun. Is it possible for me to do a podcast episode and speak extemporaneously on what happened in the episode without actually watching the episode? I think this is a test we're gonna have to try for the next half season. But as it is, I did watch this episode. As you said, yes, it was all kinds of crap. I think, like you, I had maybe one, maybe two things that I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then it drowned in a sea of shit, pretty much. Uh-huh. Sort of like poked its little nose up and then it fell right back down in again. I did say there is one overriding positive thing, which we talked about when we first started, recording, before we started recording for you folks. But it'll be on our B-roll. Listen for it. They did come through on one big thing, which is I guarantee we were all expecting this to be a shitty episode. And man, it was. And they did, thumbs up. They really came through on a shitty episode, like across the board. Not nary a single positive thing about the episode. So yeah, let's that's that. Before we get into some of the specifics of the episode, we've been challenging ourselves, and the challenge gets harder week to week, I must say. I still am enjoying the fact that we're challenging ourselves with this. But with it being such a negative sort of morass week to week, we've been challenging ourselves to try and find one positive thing from sometime in the archives of Fear. Different season, different character that really stuck with you, a moment, a scene, whatever. Just to sort of have something positive to talk about. And then that way we'd know we've have at least one good thing to talk about every week, even if the whole episode was crap, kind of like this one. Yes. So again, you went first last week, so I'll jump in. And my final one for this half season, I wanted to say that I always really loved Daniel's backstory. I wish we got a couple more details, but I loved the way they sort of always let it kind of dripped out very slowly. And it was great because we hadn't seen anything like that. We had other series there, there's a cop, people who were like criminals in another life and did all these other things. But to have someone who was like, his job was he was a torturer, and it was just such a fascinating thing. And for him to have transitioned to such a life of like quiet with his wife and a daughter and whatever, and then to be, because of the apocalypse, thrown back into this life that he thought he was finished with, I just always thought the way they took Daniel's his backstory and used it I always thought was a really, really, really interesting tactic. And I loved that part of Daniel as a character. How about you? What's your one positive thing?
Well, I think this might surprise some people, but I actually have a positive thing from the Knucklehead era of
I'm so glad I'm sitting.
I know. Yeah. Are you clutching your pearls?
If I wore plurals, I'd be hanging on to them right now.
All right. And actually, the thing that I am looking back on and that I did enjoy, or I liked, whatever you want to call it, was episode 4.10 from season 4, episode 10, and the title was called "Close Your Eyes." And that was the episode where Alicia and Charlie were trapped in that house while the hurricane raged outside.
Yes.
And it was really well written, and it, it's got features my future Australian ex-wife, so that's great. And it's a powerhouse episode where the two of them just get to act the crap out of this confrontation between Alicia and Charlie about killing Nick. And clearly Alicia has a lot of anger towards Charlie for that, for shooting her brother in cold blood. And it was, something the fans wanted to see because, oh my God, how can these two characters be in the same room with each other? It was great. And it was written by not the Knuckleheads, surprise, surprise. It's written by a guy named Shintaro Shimosawa. And it's also should be no surprise that after this episode, he only wrote one other episode, and that was in season 4, a few episodes after this. And then he never wrote for the show again. So clearly the Knuckleheads went, yeah, what are you doing? You can't write for this show.
You wrote quality things.
Yeah, right. But anyway, I think that's as close as we got to any sort of resolution amongst the characters about, stuff they had done to each other that was, really kind of hurtful and hard to get over. Again, we never got to see Lucy go at Charlie.
Yep.
For what happened. They were like best of buddies there at the end. That was out of sight, out of mind. So anyway, I really liked that episode. I thought it was well made. It was directed by Satrazemis, so
yeah. See
what happens when he has a good script, right? So anyway, that would be my thing. It was episode 410, Close Your Eyes, which is Alicia and Charlie. Basically, it looks like Alicia's going to kill Charlie, and they're stuck in this house because the storm is literally right outside. And I thought that was really well done. So there you go.
That's a good. I really loved that episode. That really was a really great episode, and like you said, surprising how sort of deep into the Knuckleheads' reign it kind of was. But it was, it was like one of those shining stars in the middle where we're like, it's when the show was still in that whole like, wow, this episode was really crappy, and then the next week the episode would be, I don't know, this was pretty good again. And then it's when it was dealing with ups, downs, and then it just sort of jumped off the cliff not too long after that. But yeah, this was one of those like sort of shining stars that whole season.
Yeah, not to bring back, painful memories, but the first half of that season was the Vultures season, where we find out what happened to Madison. Nick gets killed.
Right.
And of course we are introduced to June and John Dory and all of those
and
people,
Althea
and then
too,
Morgan and Al and Morgan shows up too. And then at the break, then the second half of that season, we had the crazy dirty marker lady.
Yeah. Oh God. So awful.
And then we had, and then that introduced Wendell and Mo Collins.
And
Sarah, I think, and then also the beer guy, and I think that's where like the Vulture season was okay, just because we're like, what happened to Madison? Where's Madison?
Yeah.
Is she coming back? And so on. But then the dirty marker lady story was not very good. And then it just went downhill. And then of course the next season they, did the whole plane crash and they're stuck in the one part of Texas they can't get out of apparently. And all of that stuff that was just really bad. So
yeah.
So,
but that really was sort of like the last like absolutely quality episode before things really fell off for that second half of season 4. So thanks for bringing that up. I might need to go back and watch that episode again. That was such a really good episode.
It was. It really.
Yeah.
It would. It's right now. If I were to, pick like, my quote unquote, and I'm using air quotes, favorite episode of the Knucklehead era, that's probably it.
Yeah, I'd say it's
there's
it would go back and forth 1 and 2 between. Man, that Dwight and Al episode is just so good. But
episode.
Yeah, and but this one I had honestly forgotten about this one because it was so long ago. So, man, yeah, I'm like making a note. I might need to watch that episode and report back.
4.10. The title is Close Your Eyes.
Love it. All right, so let's get into stuff that's terrible, shall we? Because we can't linger on this one episode that was from 5 years ago.
5 years ago.
That was actually good. So first up, we're going to talk about fear, obviously. Let's get into the episode description, and then we'll get into our final points. So Steve, why don't you go and do all of that, please?
All right. Well, I will, and I'm sorry to announce that there is no sponsor for this week. There's two episodes to watch, and I just didn't quite have enough time to nail down a sponsor. So I'm sorry. I know lots of you, this is your favorite part of the whole podcast. You're probably turning us off as we speak, but yeah. So, but rest assured, with Dead City, 1.2 next week, we will do everything we can to have a sponsor. So.
Yes. I say we like I do anything.
Yeah. Yes. Well, you do. You man those phones. So there you go.
I do. So.
All right. So again, the episode description, however, I can give you that. It's 8.6, Fear the Walking Dead, and the title again is All I See Is Red. And the description that we got is Morgan fights his past as he and Madison race to stop Padre's expansion. That is your episode description.
Terrible. God. And of course, written by.
Back to the Knuckleheads. Was there any doubt? Last week we got a bit of a respite, and now they're back. And this episode again was directed by Satrazemis, and just as much as I loved his direction in Close Your Eyes from back in season 4, this is just a train wreck, and I don't blame him because there's only so much you can do with terrible writing. I mean, it's so anyway, that's who you have is the Knuckleheads as your writer, and the director is Michael Satrazemis. So let's get into everything we loved.
Yeah. Well, I will say one of the few things that I went, that was interesting, was the way they did the title card with all the different faces. I thought that was interesting because they've never employed that before. And here was, Morgan's last appearance. So because they have confirmed that we won't see him ever again on Fear. So that's that. It's a wrap on Morgan Jones. So I thought that was an interesting sort of, little bow on the, shit sandwich that it has been Morgan Jones the last. Yeah.
It's interesting. It's interesting that they put the Eastman, the cheesemaker, in that title card, but they did not put Rick Grimes.
Yeah, I wonder if they couldn't. Like maybe there was like some kind of, I don't know. Yeah. Maybe they were just like, you can use this imagery and this imagery, but you can't use Rick Grimes in another show.
It could be. I mean, maybe it's they don't. Andy Lincoln, won't let them.
It might be.
They would have to pay.
Yeah, I think that might be it.
The other thing too is I believe everybody they showed is dead.
That's true.
In that flashback, because they show Eastman, they show Dwayne, they show Jenny, they show Grace. I think they show Alicia.
Yeah.
They show John Dory. So again, it's sort of all these people that he, mostly met on Fear.
Yeah.
But they're all people that have died, and so it could be that too. It could be that too, that they just were going with the sort of ghosts of the past kind of thing. But I mean, it was an interesting title card. But again, like I kind of said, who cares?
Yeah. No. Absolutely.
Yeah.
it's another instance of them doing something that's sort of visually, oh, that looks kind of cool and interesting, and then nothing else in the episode really lives up to it, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh, okay.
Yeah. So
you want to read Eric Kane for us?
Yeah, I feel like I said, they have confirmed no more Morgan for the rest of this series. So that's it. And in Eric Kane's review, he said, and I feel like it's sort of where a lot of us sort of stand on it. And he says, there was just one thing I enjoyed in this week's Fear the Walking Dead mid-season finale. Spoilers ahead. We've all watched it. Morgan Jones is gone. Nothing against Lenny James, who is a fine actor and I suppose is doing the best with the absurd scripts he's given, but I have rarely been so relieved to see a character written off a show. And I kind of agree, you know, as much as I know they're not doing anything of substance with Madison either, I know that they pretty much killed the character of Morgan, and I hated whenever it was a Morgan-centric episode, at least in the last like year or so. So to get his character off the show, and then now we can sort of like wrap up all this other stuff in the next 6 episodes. I'm not saying it's going to be good, and I'm not saying that they won't like torpedo Madison and anyone else that's around her, but I just am like, it was just such a drastic difference from like such a beloved character to one that is just like universally like, ugh, get off the screen.
He's annoying.
Yeah.
It's just the guy that we saw walk away there at the end is not the guy that Rick Grimes left in Atlanta.
No.
You know, I mean, it's just not. It's not even close. You know, I mean, it's they just sucked out all of the good parts of Morgan Jones' character and turned him into this just badly written guy. And I agree, like you said with Eric Kane. You know, it's not Lenny James' fault, right? We've seen Lenny James. He's actually a really good actor. If you've seen him in other stuff, you know, that's well written. You know, I think he's really good. Yeah. And it just got to the point where, you know, after a while, when he would talk, I would just kind of hear the Peanuts gang teacher, the wah 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 wah, you know what I mean? Because it was just crap. So
well, they just really, you know, they never, you know, he had his demons and things he dealt with on the main show, and then he left, basically told Rick, like, I'm leaving because I want to get a new start and try not being around people for a while and see if that like helps, whatever. So when he left, you would hope like there's some kind of, you know, he knows he needs to work on himself. And then we jump forward, like where we are now was like almost 10 years from when he had that conversation with Rick. And he's, and I get it. Like, I understand how trauma can embed itself and et cetera. But it made him such a one-note character. They literally only played the I have a traumatic past card, which is, if this were any other TV show, it might be more compelling. But everyone at this point has had a traumatic past. We're in an apocalypse. So everybody has had traumatic things happen to them, to the people they love, to the, you know, friends and even newfound friends, newfound family. Everybody's had traumatic events, and it doesn't, you know, downplay the trauma he went through. Absolutely. And he did go through a trauma, but to make that the only thing about his character is where they failed him. You know, Morgan Jones should have had more layers to him, more things to him, you know, and just make it about that, as it was just such a disservice, you know. That's why everybody hated it, because it was like, you know, it was the same. That's the part. It was the same over and over again. You know, it was so sad. Sad for us.
Yeah, you're right. Right. I know it is. It's sad for Lenny James. It's sad for us. You know, I mean, it's something that I brought up before. It's it's the Road Warrior speech, where Papagallo tells Max, because Max is kind of upset, because his wife and kid died, and he's like, "Do you think that makes you special? Look around you. Everybody's suffered. You know what I mean? Everybody's killed one man too many. Everybody's had somebody die that he was shot. You know what I mean? There's nothing, no sob story you can come up with to anyone who's still around in this apocalypse where they're going to be like, oh my God, have you suffered? You know what I mean? It's like, no, it's like, you know what? Shut the hell up and get to work making the world a better place.
Right.
Or, you know what? Put the gun in your mouth and pull the trigger, because no one cares.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a shared experience is the thing. They made it so singular for Morgan. And it's like, he didn't put his son down, and he's responsible for his son's death. So many people were responsible for people that they love's deaths. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, it's
just, and again, like I said, it's not downplaying his trauma, because it's a real trauma for him to have. But to make it seem like he's the only one who went through something that bad is where they made the mistake,
Yeah.
I think.
Oh yeah.
I
agree.
So the next sort of stuff that we have written is, I think you and I just did it all in one line, but you sort of line by line we just really listed not our top points, but our top, these things are ridiculous points.
Yeah. Just so many. You kind of jump a little out of order. I was doing it as I was watching, so they're kind of in the sequence in which things happen. But
go through your list, and I'll just, because mine's just sort of who cares?
Yeah. Okay. Well, the first one is when Madison and Morgan and Daniel and like the Daniel Parents Association are walking across the river. They get to the place where all the containers are, the container yard, and it's empty, right? All the ghouls are gone.
Mm-hmm.
And then they walk across this river, and like there literally are like maybe like 4 or 5 ghouls that are, within like about 5 or 10 feet of them, and the water's maybe up a little bit past their knees, and the humans are just wading right through it like you do. And if the ghouls are like somehow immobilized, they can't possibly walk in water. I don't know. I'm like, really? This is what happens now, that ghouls just can't move? It was just ridiculous. It's again, more of the background players, right? That the ghouls on this show are they're just sort of roaming around in the background of scenes. They never really do anything anymore, unless it's killing Shrike at the end, which we'll get to. But yeah, that was the first absurd thing. And then one of my comments was, oh my God, so many bad things in this episode. And I watched it twice.
Yeah.
It's, what's wrong with me?
Yeah, I know.
And so then, Morgan keeps having these readouts where he, kind of loses consciousness, because apparently that's what happens when, you've gone through all that trauma that he has. And after one of them, Mo-Ren stabs him in the upper chest with a knife, and it's got to be like at least a 6-inch blade that she buries up to the hilt in his chest, and he literally just pulls it out. And I think later on in the episode, he kind of has his arm in a sling, maybe, and like he's got like a piece of cloth pushed up against the wound. That's the only medical attention that he did, and he's like up to his neck in water at some point and everything. And I'm just like, really? So that's what happens. You get stabbed with that big of a knife right there, and you're just like, I'm good, man. I'm off this show in about 20 minutes.
Well, you really, that's true. He had cause to celebrate. He's like, I don't. Who cares if I got a hole in my body? I'm bye-bye. I'm out.
That's right.
I think too, you forgot he was stabbed in the television
the
no pain zone, which is the upper shoulder, which is, there's no major organ up here, there's no major artery, and so it's like the soft spot of like, you could practically stick an axe in there and someone would be like, I'm okay. I'm
fine. I've had worse.
Yeah.
I
noticed that as well, and he was in pain at first, and then later he's like, we got to keep moving. And I'm like, Do we?
Do we? I mean, are you even
how
able
are
to?
you moving right now? And
Yeah.
and just think about all that like fetid, disgusting swamp water too.
Oh, I know.
Sure, that was great.
Right? What is that? Yeah. What is that doing to get bacteria in there and everything? Because again, in the Knuckleheads apocalypse, there are tons of antibiotics and clean bandages, and
Right.
you know what I mean. It's not like all he has to do is like walk about half a block, and he'll find like an ambulance that was abandoned 12 years ago, and it's still fully stocked with good materials, right? That haven't gone bad. I mean, it's foolish to try and put logic on Knucklehead writing, but and then just speaking of the houseboat, you know, after she stabs him, apparently he passes out. And when he wakes up, Moren, who, I mean, what would you say? Moren maybe weighs 80 pounds soaking wet.
Yeah,
right.
Tops.
Right. That teeny tiny little girl drags Lenny James unconscious through a swamp, past walkers, into a houseboat. And then there's even a line where he's like, how did you get me in here? And her response is, I couldn't leave you outside. And it's like, that's not what he asked.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, I feel like the thing that made me upset at the whole him like sort of losing time and space, you know, because it was a trope they used throughout the episode. He'd like see red, and then the next thing you know, it'd be like, how did I get here?
I'm buried up to my neck in mud.
what happened?
Yeah.
And I did laugh when he was sort of stuck in the mud because it had a real sort of quicksand feel. And
it did.
I love that meme that goes around Facebook where like, when I was growing up, I was meant to be, I was told that quicksand would be a much larger threat to me as I got older, you know, because it was used in like everything.
Oh, it was. And the other thing is, you know, the whole point of quicksand when you see it is that you sink very slowly. So shouldn't they have called it slow sand?
Yeah, no kidding. Hello. Terrible branding, people. But the thing that upset me the most about doing that, and that's part of it, was him waking up like, you know, how to get out of there and whatever. It's really like they needed to keep the episode moving. They needed to jump in these moments, and they're like, how do we make it so that we'll have these ridiculous things happen and we don't have to explain them? Easy. We'll have him pass out or have some sort of spell so that when he wakes up, he'll be like, how'd you get me out of there? And they don't answer the question because they don't have to, because we lost time for a little while. And after they did it like the second time, I'm like, oh, fuck these guys. Like, that's the laziest thing in the world. I don't have to tell you because he was asleep.
And the second one, when he does wake up and he's like up to his neck in the mud, I'm like, what, Daniel and Madison just left him?
Yeah, why wouldn't they?
In like a they leave him in a field, and there's another scene too that I didn't get to when they're trying, because they find out that Ren and the prefects are like gone into the swamp to try and lead the ghouls away from the shipping yard or whatever, and so they're kind of trapped in there. And so then, you know, Morgan's like, we got to go get them. And so literally these like 9 people, there's a scene, and they're like walking towards, you know, away from the camera. They're walking, and in the distance there's this CGI effect of, you know, like 3,000 or 4,000 walkers that are all milling around over there. And I'm like, really? So like the 9 of you are gonna just wade into that army? It's like, that's dumb. You know, you wouldn't. You'd be dead, right? I don't care how much red you're gonna see, Morgan. They're gonna kill you, you know. But yeah, it just. The fact then, though, that he sees red, and then when he comes out of it, he's by himself and everyone else has just left him there. I'm like, why would you do that? You know, Madison, what kind of a friend are you towards him if you're just like, yeah, you know, we'll just leave him over there in that pile of mud. That's fine. You know what I mean? It just made no sense, right? It made no sense.
Yeah, that's the tagline for, they should have used that instead of, you know, Fear the Walking Dead, you know, come see the ending or whatever the season tagline is. It should be like, it making no sense.
It making no sense. It making no sense. You know what I'm saying?
It did not make no sense.
All right, so let's see. Oh yeah, here's. Oh no, Dwight and O'Sherry broke up. Whatever. I
Aw.
mean, you know what I mean. It's just like, were you guys even really together? Because you never acted like it. We've covered that before. So should we really be upset by this? I don't know. I maybe okay, whatever. I those characters in particular. I don't care. There's nothing about the way they've been written in the last 2 or 3 years or seasons that made them at all interesting. And the only thing I would say is, Dwight's the one that wants to pull the plug on this relationship. And I kind of was watching and I kind of was saying, Dwight, have you looked at yourself in the mirror lately? Because do you really think you're ever going to pull anybody who looks even remotely as good as her ever again in your life? Really?
Yeah.
Are you? Because I don't think so.
Yeah. Because I mean, Austin Emilio can peel that whole like melted skin face thing off, but Dwight can't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Dwight's kind of stuck with Iron Face,
Yeah, exactly.
So.
Can we also talk just for a hot second? I didn't include it in my notes. I mean, I included that it happened, but can we talk about the absolute like emotional torture that they did? I talked about how crazy it was that they showed the intentional injuring of a child with Finch and going through this sad process where you're like, it's a cure thing. Is it going to work? Is it not going to work? It's probably not gonna. He's not doing well. And then they friggin' kill him off camera.
Off camera. Yes,
So
they do.
you don't even. So they had the balls to do all that other stuff. But then our introduction to Finch is dead is bang, bang, bang. We're putting his like little headstone marker thing into the ground. I'm like, you idiots.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
what the hell?
And remember, you get that scene with June, who basically did nothing in this episode, and she, Dwight's like putting the bullets in the clip, and he's like, she's like, what are you doing? And he's like, well, I'm gonna go into the swamp and try and help Morgan, find the prefects and everything, and June's like, I wasn't there when my daughter died, and so she died alone, and no one was there to comfort her and everything, and like, you should probably stay here for now. And he kind of mulls it over and agrees with her. So I really thought, much like you, that okay, so we're going to get that scene, right? But they didn't do it because, again, they're squeamish and they don't want to do that kind of stuff. So yeah. Here's one. So we're supposed to believe that the general kept the only set of coordinates to the magic location in his super magic binoculars. That's where he kept them.
Yeah, and they weren't
Seriously?
even sure they would be there. They were like,
Yeah.
It's the only place it could be. And you're like, why?
Really? Yeah.
That's it? He wasn't even going to bring the binoculars.
He wasn't, and he was using them to look out of first.
So why would...
Yeah, it just makes no sense. It's dumb. It's done. It was neat to see Michael B. Silver come back and get to be a ghoul version of him, but yeah, that was dumb. The scene where all the prefects have and Shrike's brother have Daniel and all of the parents, and they're like on their knees, and Dove and the brother are like, pull the trigger, come on, pull the trigger, and none of these kids are able to do it. I mean, that possibly could be the worst moment on TV ever. Yeah. Right there. I mean, just for melodrama. I really wish I could have been on some of these sets when they were shooting this, and just to see how much the actors were just kind of like, seriously, this is what's gonna happen. The eye rolling and the sort of, it's a paycheck, and just because it comes across so bad and so much, you must pay the rent. I can't pay the rent. You must pay the rent type melodrama.
Yeah.
they had to be aware of it, right? They had to know that it's like, oh my God, this is just terribly, terribly written. So it would have been neat to see that. But yeah, I thought that scene was ridiculous. Let's see. Oh, then Morgan left, and my note at the end there was, "We'll see you, Morgan." I'd say let's stay in touch, but no, we're not going to stay in touch.
Yeah,
so
we're not.
Yeah.
That's not happening.
Yeah. And I know you made this point, which I did, so I didn't write it down, but that is okay. Again, the weird, where exactly are we? Because we're supposed to believe that Morgan and Moren drag Grace's corpse from, like, I don't know, Louisiana all the way back to Atlanta somewhere to bury her next to Eastman, right? I mean, how did that happen?
Magic.
I just, and then of course you have the point about the magic walkie-talkie. So why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, and then it's here's the thing that's been a part of this whole last couple of years. I don't dislike the ideas that they choose. I just don't think that they're not making them realistic. They're just doing them because they're cool. Like, I don't think it's a terrible idea that he would bury someone who meant a whole lot to him and connect it with his time with Eastman and how important that was, and then sort of turn that into I might try and go look for my buddy Rick Grimes. I don't think those are terrible ideas, but if you don't show us how you got there, dragging a fully grown woman who's dead with an 8-year-old to someplace in the middle of the wilderness, because Eastman was he was at like some remote cabin. So it's not he was near a main road or anything like that. He was very remote. So, and I'm not saying
apparently a lot of people are buried there too.
Yeah. Well, he used to bury the,
oh, did he bury the walker?
He buried
the walkers. They all
walkers.
Seem to have headstones. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
so again, it's been so long since I've seen that episode.
It's been a while. I had to remind myself. But I don't dislike the idea. I just think all of the factual stuff leading up to him getting there, they don't make any kind of sense. And then I don't dislike the idea of the end of Morgan Jones being, I've got sort of a new lease on life. I'm thinking slightly differently. And I'm feeling a little bit better than I have in years. And the only time I've ever felt myself is when I've been around my friend Rick. I think I need to go try and see if I can find him. That's fine. Mm-hmm. Say that and go and do that. But the walkie-talkies. First of all, the magic walkie-talkies that they even work is ridiculous. You last talked to Rick Grimes almost 10 years ago. How would he even think to even go to a walkie-talkie to look for you or listen for you? The whole thing is just like doing that is like the equivalent of saying, Rick, I'd love to meet up again, and throwing it in a bottle and throwing it in the ocean. It has the same likelihood of happening. And I understand that part of what they were doing is showing that I don't think I've got a good chance of seeing him again, but I'd just like to try. Like, I'd like to, it be something hopeful to sort of wish for. I get that part.
Yeah.
But I just, the walkie-talkies, they're just ridiculous, So to have taken the Eastman moment, which was not a terrible moment, but all the stuff like, how did they get there and how did this happen?
Yeah.
And then
what shape was Grace in when they finally put her in the ground?
Jesus. Oh my God. It's not like they have embalming fluid or anything. Hello.
Or an air conditioned car. Well, they might have had an air conditioned car, but it's just you're like it. I mean, I also appreciated, I guess, the callback to, Rick every morning at dawn would get on the radio and try and talk to Morgan. Right. In that first season, right? So that's that's the Knuckleheads' way of going, hey, see, hey, the original show, the good show, remember that? So I appreciate that kind of nod to, well, he's doing the same thing that Rick did for him, okay. But yeah, it's just the technology that these guys let these people have is, I mean, they didn't really go into it much, but remember, out in the distance is this like massive container ship that somehow still works, that according to Dove is fully supplied and fueled to make the journey to wherever it is they're going, right?
And it hasn't been touched by a single person.
No, and like the CRM hasn't found it. The CRM didn't know that about Padre with all their boats zipping along up and down. You know what I mean? CRM's everywhere, right? The helicopters are all over them. Nope, don't know about them. Yeah, there's just so many weird things that just don't make any sense. Yeah. You're right. The one good thing I liked in the episode was when Shrike, and this is also one thing that you did not like, when Shrike lets Daddy give her a little peck on the neck. I like the fact that finally on this forking show, the Knuckleheads let a ghoul actually bite somebody and let the effects guys have fun, because he gets a big chunk of the neck and stretches the flesh away from her, and it was a great gag. It really was. And I'm just like, it figures that literally in the last one of the last episodes, they finally let a zombie actually bite somebody on this show. But I know you kind of were more interested in the ridiculousness of Shrike.
Yeah, they build and build and build this moment, this sort of like, I mean, I guess you could call it sort of like this fake moment, because I don't think I didn't ever feel any kind of fear or trepidation towards Shrike or any of her people. But, they built her out to be like this sort of big bad in a way, or at least a kind of bad. And then it's just like, all it took was, boom, seeing her dad's dead, zombiness coming toward her. I felt like that was ridiculous, because I feel like she's gone over there to visit, like she seems like the type that would, I mean, they lingered there for a while after it happened and all of that. That's what they showed in that flashback. And so, I feel like she's the kind of person, and the brother too, the attachment to their dad, I feel like they like, they know what it was like to be around him. I don't think that this was surprising what he looked like. So and they're supposed to be so like badass and everything. And yes, I understand every sort of badass has their kryptonite. But it just was so, and the way she just sort of allowed it all to happen was just
drop the gun, gets down on her knees. I'm so sorry. And it's like, oh, come on. And then again, they couldn't kill her. They have to have her survive, at least for a while. And I couldn't believe it when they cut to the scene where she's like strapped down in the train car. And June has the ghoul on that ridiculous extender thingy right above her. And because I first thought, I'm like, wow, June's going to let that ghoul thing just eat her alive.
Yeah.
Just be like, you know what I mean? June kind of says, I found, remember she says, go ahead and scream. Nobody can hear you here. Right. And I was just like, I'm like, okay, this is June's way of getting even for, all the experiments that Shrike made her, all the people that Shrike made her get bit. Now she's going to let this thing just eat her until she dies. And then they don't even do that. They chicken out. Of course they do, because she calls Dwight and Sherry and, what should I do? And, they're like, oh, make it painless, quick and painless or whatever. And then
because that's what Finch wanted.
Yeah, right. And then they don't even show that, because then the dipshit brother shows up, and June's like, if you don't do it, I will. And then he's like, okay, I'll do it. And then June just is like, well, that's good enough for me. And then she leaves. And so, we're left with him like whimpering like, a 5-year-old over her, like, and I was just like, oh my God, even in those scenes, the melodrama is crazy.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. And they were supposed to be the leaders. You know what I mean? Like, that's the part that is crazy is, they were, when you think of how Shrike was in like those first couple of scenes with Madison in those first episodes where we got to meet her, she was so cold and calculated, and, there was just an air about her, and everybody did what she said. They didn't know. She was like the right hand of, quote unquote, Padre, whoever that was. So they knew that she had authority and she was in charge, and she had, and it just felt like it went from that to this, and it just was like very quick. It just was. Yeah. Yeah. And it just felt unearned in a lot of ways. I don't know. Like the whole, series.
So now that's wrapped up the Padre storyline, and the very last scene we get is that Madison, who I will point out did not have any problems breathing in this episode at all.
No,
even though she was rowing that boat pretty hard, and she was fighting ghouls and stumbling through the swamp, but nope, didn't need that oxygen at all in this episode. But anyway, at the end of the episode, she somehow has gotten back in charge of everyone, including these parents she stole children from. They want to follow her, I guess. And so the very last scene we get is someone is listening to a radio, and we hear Madison, and she's saying, Padre has fallen, and there's a new Padre, and if you're in the area where Padre was patrolling, go to a certain point and send an SOS, and we have supplies, we'll pick you up, you can join the community. And then she gives the coordinates, and we see whoever's doing this writes down, we assume, the coordinates or something, and then goes and puts all of this stuff in a bag. And the big reveal amongst the stuff, and you can go into it in more detail, but the big reveal is my future Australian ex-wife's bony metal arm thing she had is one of the items that's put in the bag. Yep. And at the very last bit is the person picks the bag up and leaves, and so we're kind of left with, who was that? And you have some theories.
Well, we were talking about it via text, but then I looked on the internet, and the internet schooled me because we both were talking about it. And if you don't want to be spoiled by this, then just like skip ahead by like 10, 15 minutes or whatever.
Okay.
We were saying that we thought it most likely would have been Al, that it felt correct for it to be Al. But online, they are talking about the fact that, spoiler, the actor who played Troy in season 4 at the Auto Ranch, not season 4, that was season 3. I'm so sorry.
Season 3.
Yeah, at the Auto Ranch. And he was struck down by Madison. We did not see him die, and we talked about it at the time. When everybody was like, "Well, did he die? Did he not die?" Because I thought like Troy was a really good adversary with Madison, because he went back and it was very creepy and strange. He went back and forth between wanting her to kind of be his mom, and also wanting to harm her. And he was very unhinged, as I remember. He had some psychological issues, but I feel like it was interesting. It was an interesting way to look at it, but he played the role really well. The actor was great. It was written really well. And then when the dam thing happened, when the dam burst or was blown up, before that happened, Madison had this sort of confrontation with him, and she hits him with a hammer, and he's knocked out. And it certainly looks like he's dead, but we don't get any confirmation of that. And you know how television is. If you don't see the person die, and we can't confirm that that's what happened there, then they're fair game. And then I guess apparently Christine Evangelista, who plays Sherry, at some point a few months ago, and I didn't know about this until I just read about it online. I've been avoiding a lot of the Fear the Walking Dead media, mostly because I don't give a shit. But I guess apparently she let it slip on Instagram, whether she said something in a video or said something in a description of something, but she let it slip that the actor who played Troy was back on set. And so people pounced on it, etc. So it's been spoiled that he's back. So if you didn't know that and you chose to listen, I'm sorry, but there it is.
But at this point, really, what difference does it make? And,
it
so
really
they're going to bring
doesn't.
back yet another character, and it's going to be stupid.
Yeah, of course, and it'll all be stupid. And here's the thing: Steve and I were talking about this before we started recording. I don't think that this is like the other stuff. I don't think it's a terrible idea. I thought Madison was at some of her best when that's what, the Otto family was a great adversary. Her relationship with the old man, and then her relationship with Troy, and compounding that, how Alicia was in an actual physical relationship with the other son. And it was just all these weird levels. It was just a really well done, kind of complicated situation. And it was done well. It was written well. And these people all had their own little arcs going on. Back when, the show was actually written with purpose and all of that. So I don't think that Madison and Troy facing off against each other, with him holding some grudge from years ago, is a terrible idea. I just think it's too late for it. I think all the Madison stuff, we're too late to do all of that too. People bellyached about wanting Madison back for so long that by the time they did it, people were like, yeah, but your show sucks. So why would we want to bring Madison back?
Your show sucks, and the two kids are gone.
Yeah, so there's no tension there. It's just Madison by herself.
Yeah.
So the question is, so we know that Troy is coming back. So is that Troy in that little clip who was collecting all this sort of ephemera of the people that he knows that sort of wronged him? But I don't know did Troy even have any connection with Strand? Because Strand was at the dam. So would it be the connection of, Strand was part of blowing up the dam? I don't know.
Yes, again, like you said, it's so long ago that a lot of the details are very fuzzy to everybody, where you're like, really, did he even, how much interaction did he have with Strand? And I know you said the sunglasses we see on the table are supposed to be Strand's. I thought those were Al's, to be honest with you.
And I did too, which is why I was thinking of the Al connection as well. So when you said Al, I was like, oh, that's a possibility. That makes sense. And the sunglasses, whatever. I don't know. I really don't.
Well, because they do make a very big point of that hammer.
They do,
and it's the same kind of ball peen hammer thing that Madison used in that episode. So
yes, which is where I think a lot of people are making those connections. So I don't know. They released a trailer, which you can search for online, which shows images. It actually, I'm literally just looking at it now, and it shows images from the second half. And it does show, we do still get Dwight and Sherry. We still get, so we will see, I saw Dwight, I didn't see Sherry. So Dwight sort of roams back around again. That's not the end of him. There's some Strand in there as well. There's a little teaser of Strand, Daniel around as well. And there were some images I saw where people are like, they freeze frame it, and then they show it's like a 15% of the side of someone's face, and people screenshot it and put it on Twitter, and they're like, is that Troy? And I'm like, maybe it is, maybe it's not, I don't know, but I guess
guys, that's a nose, okay?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're like, how can you tell?
Daniel Sharman is the actor's name. I couldn't remember because it had been so long since he'd been on the show. But I guess it's confirmed he'll be back. Whether or not that's him in that teaser, I guess we'll have to see. Are they trying to misdirect us in some way?
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. I also
that
said
seems to be way too smart for these guys.
It is way too smart. I also said to Steve, could it also be, could it still be Al? And Al has somehow, because she's out and about with
Isabel.
I couldn't remember her name. Oh my God.
Well, they're living in that little cabin.
Yeah, but you have to assume that there's some movement happening as well. I don't think they were safe there from her people. Right. I think there was some element of, but anyway, my point is they seemed a little bit more mobile. They had access to helicopters and things like that. Could Al have somehow come across Troy or something? And I don't know. The thing is, I said to Steve, I'm like, whatever is the most ridiculous thing that could be come up with for that, what that little scene is sort of teasing, whatever is the thing that someone could most go, ooh, I don't know how you would make this happen, but wouldn't it be cool if this happened? Then that's the thing that they'll do, because it won't be rooted in reality and it won't make sense for the characters. So whatever that is, that's the thing they're going to do. So it certainly makes sense that they could resurrect a character that we thought was dead like 5 seasons ago.
Yeah. It's another example of something off the wouldn't it be cool list.
Yeah, and it would definitely make sense for them to do something that doesn't make sense, because that's how they roll. Yeah. So I don't know. I think I'm kind of 50-50. I don't know who that is. I feel like maybe they're trying to do some gotcha misdirection. I think that's possible. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure who it is either, and I don't care, so I'm not really gonna.
That's sad, isn't it?
And, I mean, that's the other thing. It's just that there's so much apathy that I have towards the show that it doesn't matter. I just logistically, if we add it up, they went through half the season. We had no Strand, we had no Luciana. The other characters from previous seasons we just assume are gone, right?
Yeah.
Mo Collins is gone, Wendell's gone. We have to guess that Charlie died, but again, we don't know. We haven't seen her in the grave, so who knows? But I mean, it just. This was clearly they were only able to talk Lenny James back for another half season, and that was all he would put up with.
Yeah.
And so this whole season, the half season, all 6 episodes, it was the Morgan farewell show.
Right.
Okay, I mean, think about it. There were whole episodes there where Madison wasn't in it at all.
Yeah. We did all of this to bring you back, and really, it was
and then she's gone. And so it's. So I mean, it's basically the apathy is set into the point where whatever it is they come up with, I'll watch it, I'll talk about it. I'm pretty sure it's going to be stupid.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty. I mean, they haven't let us down yet on the stupidity. That's for sure.
No.
Yeah.
No. They haven't.
Anything else for the fear episode that you think we need to make sure that we cover? I feel like we got it all.
No, just thank you, relief that it's over.
Yeah, only 6 more. To talk about.
Yeah, only 6 more, and did they announce a premiere date for the episode 7?
Not that I'm aware of. I would assume that they want to, I would assume that the plan is probably to have it run so that when its finale is, they'll do that the same night as the Daryl Dixon show, and they still are saying fall for that.
Yeah.
So
well, and again, with the strike and everything, we don't know how that's going to screw everything up too.
So
there's that.
The possibility exists. This may drag out far longer than we want it to, but here's hoping that they're able to have those that back 6 episodes happen in the fall and sort of wrap it up as soon as they can.
Sounds good to me.
Because I don't want to be doing this in early next year. That's for sure. Yeah. Terrible. All right. So, shake it off. Shake it off. Whew. Yeah. All right. Good. Feel better. All right. So let's move into more compelling television, shall we?
Let's.
And let's talk about Dead City. And again, you went first last week, so my turn to go first on my quick thoughts. I would say I actually have like quick thoughts, which never happens. I liked a lot of stuff about this episode. I have a lot of questions. I have some things that I think logistically and factually I'm like, but I know these characters. I know that they're better written. I know that there's more love around these characters, and the setting alone was worth it to watch this episode. So even if you're not a big Negan and Maggie lover, if you hate the idea of them doing a show together, whatever, just watch it for the setting, because having the apocalyptic Manhattan is worth it. Whether or not it fires on all cylinders, we'll get into that in terms of like production values, but I would give this a solid, like, to me, I'm teetering just below a 7 out of 10. I thought it was good, a good start, but how they do the next like episode or two really shows whether or not this is something that can be compelling. How about you? What did you think of the first episode?
I it's clearly better than the garbage we had to watch before it. But I'm really going to reserve judgment. I want to get a couple episodes in and see where they're going to go.
Right.
I think it's too early to just be like, I love it, or, oh, it's terrible. We got to see what's going to happen.
Right.
But I think a lot of what you said is kind of where I'm at, where there were a lot of things in there where I was like, yeah, really? Okay. As far as cars and boats and things that are still working and there's no problem and electricity is everywhere and all that, and we'll get into it. But so there's things like that logistically, I was kind of shaking my head at. I like Negan and Maggie, and I think they have an interesting dynamic in terms of he wants to live and train kids, she wants to kill him. I think there's an interesting thing there. Yeah, they're the new odd couple. So I like that, and I think the reason why they're together, it plays. I get it. It makes sense. It's a little kind of eye rolling where it's like, really, that's the big bad guy is, somebody that Negan, had in his crew back in the day. Okay. But whatever. I think a lot of it looked great, and there was some fun moments in it. But again, I think I need a couple more episodes to kind of really get a feel of where it's going.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got some. We gave the Tales of the Walking Dead a lot of grace for a lot of episodes, so I feel like these characters have certainly earned some grace from us. And I agree. You usually got to give a show a good 3 episodes before you can really start to be critical. And I think that there's definitely more good than bad. There were some things that I didn't like, but I think they definitely have room where they can improve them. They definitely have opportunity to sort of make them a little tighter. And I'll just, offer it up to the first episode gods. Like, they can't get everything right. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get into our individual points on the episode. First, let's just get a quick episode description. Steve, if you could, right. That would be great.
Sure. This, again, it's Dead City, episode 1.1. The title is Old Acquaintances. And our description, our rewritten for syntax description.
Yeah, I did a little fixing there.
A little editing, because, what they posted, it did not make a lot of sense.
Nope.
And the only conclusion we had was that the person that was writing the descriptions had obviously just watched the Fear finale. And was just so discombobulated that they just, and they just typed something. So, yeah. But our description that we have is, Maggie finds Negan and they travel to Manhattan to try and get back her son. a marshal named Armstrong is also following Negan and is close behind. And believe us, that is way better than what they had originally put.
You're welcome.
Yes. And that is your episode description.
Let's chat a little bit about writer-director, because some of these names are I'm unfamiliar with.
Okay. Well, the writer is actually the showrunner. This guy named Eli Jorn, and he has a weird accent on the E, so maybe it's Journée or something like that. But we've talked about him before. He is written for the main show, so he's an Angela Kang disciple, because he came in in season 10, and he wrote 3 episodes. He wrote 10.5, What It Always Is, 10.12, Walk With Us, and 10.16, A Certain Doom, which I believe was the season finale for season 10, at least the original season finale for season 10. I think, didn't season 10 have the bonus episodes then after that?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
But A Certain Doom, that's the episode that Maggie and Elijah show up at the end and kind of help out and all that stuff. And the Whisperers are defeated and so on. Anyway, he wrote those. And then on Dead City, he has obviously wrote this episode. He also writes next week's episode. And then he has, I think, 2 more. And it's like episode 4 and episode 5. But interestingly enough, on the Walking Dead wiki, they also put down season 2 of Dead City, and they have a question mark. So I think that's interesting that they're at least the wiki is open to the possibility that this might not just be a 1-season story, that there might be more to this. And I think, AMC is just going to see what the ratings are like, I would guess.
Of course.
And, if it's a huge hit, obviously there will be more. But anyway, that is our writer. And again, he is the showrunner. And then our director is this gal named Lauren Iaconelli. And hopefully I pronounced that correct. And she has a little experience in the Walking Dead universe. She directed 1 episode of the main show, and that was season 11, episode 13, entitled Warlords. And then she directed 5 episodes of The World Beyond.
Oh,
so
season 1 or season 2?
I want to say season 2. I didn't write them down, but
okay.
It seemed to me they were mostly season 2. So,
mostly.
And the problem with that is, I usually try and tell you like, oh, that episode, this is what happened. But the World Beyond, there's so many storylines going on. It's really tough to very quickly summarize what an episode was about. You know what I mean? So I just didn't. But
we can the popular opinion, and we agree with it, is that season 2 was vastly superior to season 1 of World Beyond.
Yeah.
And I would actually take season 2 of World Beyond over any of the last 3 seasons of Fear in a heartbeat.
Oh God, me too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
And anyway, for Dead City, she directs this episode. She also directs next week's episode, episode 2, which is entitled Who's There? So she has 2 of this first season of Dead City. So that is your writer and your director.
I love it.
All right. So now, please tell me, where are we and when are we?
That's my moment. I wrote that.
I know.
Yes, but we all agree.
Please tell me.
I know. I think the way they started that very first sort of teaser, that little, bit at the beginning with Maggie just being right there on the waterfront looking at New York, I think it was weird how they did it. They show this scene first. So we're like, oh, I was surprised because I thought there'd be more lead up to the whole get to New York thing. But instead, because they've only got these 6 episodes, clearly they're going to have they jumped right into the action, and they'll tell it in sort of vague flashbacky little sort of cloudy scenes that she has nightmares about or whatever. However, that's the way they're going to tell the story. But it was just, this was released really quickly. If you think about it, the finale for The Walking Dead, the series finale for The Walking Dead was only a few months ago. It was not that long ago.
Oh, was
Am
it
I
eight
wrong?
months ago?
When was
What?
it?
It was November of 2022.
Okay. So less than a year.
So yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
from
that's a
November
pretty quick turnaround. Yeah, that's a pretty quick turnaround.
to go from the last time we saw Maggie and the very next thing. And the thing is that since they announced the show before the final episodes of Walking Dead were happening, we've sort of known and we've been mulling this show over in our heads for, it feels like, forever. And then the show
It's
ended.
At least a year.
Yeah. And then the show ended. And then they fast tracked. And when we knew right away, we're like, oh, this is Fear the Walking Dead. And then summer, we're going to get Maggie and Negan. I keep wanting to say Megan and Nagy. That's terrible. Terrible.
Megan and Nagy.
Megan and Nagy. But I just, to me, I feel like it's such a jump from where we ended to where we are. And then even when we start getting some establishing things like, okay, we get it. She's sort of doing recon. Then she's going to go back and try and find Negan somehow magically. And you try to stay one step ahead of these bounty hunters that are also looking for Negan. I don't know. Like, it just felt like we needed to know a little more right off the bat. I wonder if they had interspersed some of those like little images she'd had when she was sort of, having bad dreams. If they'd interspersed things of like Herschel being pulled away while she was watching and, and then maybe, showing her like leaving her people and just being like, I need to go find the one person that can help me with this or what, you know what I mean? I just think they didn't. It was tough to like see her right off the bat and you're like, oh, we're already in New York. How did we get here?
Yes.
Where were you beforehand? And how did you make it to here? And where is Negan? Oh, you're going to go back, get him, then go back to New York. And how did Negan get so close to New York? That's never explained. And all this other stuff. So I think it was just tough right off the bat to be sort of like, how did we get to where we are? And they've done a little bit. I think they've done a little bit to sort of describe how she's sort of gotten to where she is. But I'm hoping for more. I hope in the next like couple episodes they'll reveal like more pieces of the puzzle of how we got to where we were in those very first moments. So, yeah.
I agree. I hope they do. I'm not holding my breath though.
Yeah,
they
don't have a lot of time is the problem.
They don't. They got 5 more episodes to wrap up the whole story. So I think pretty much the little breadcrumbs they gave us in this one, I'm not expecting a lot more. And just thinking that they're just going to be like, hey, we told you everything we wanted to. And it is very glossed over and it is very vague and it is very unsatisfying because there were people that we knew that were at Hilltop. Yeah. And, Maggie does say at one point that, well, they're not in Hilltop anymore. They went somewhere else and built a community. But all the people were there. They went over. So all those people, why didn't they go with her? Why is she on her own on this quest for Herschel, Yeah. And again, she has some weird line about I tracked the bad guys all the way up the Hudson and then they crossed over to Manhattan. Oh, okay. And then you just happen, Negan just happens to be like, right there.
Yeah, like within like a couple of hours of driving, it felt like didn't feel like he wasn't terribly far.
Yeah. And again, Maggie has no weapons at all.
Yeah, this all feels very foolhardy.
Yeah, it's just sort of like, what were you going to do when you finally caught up with them? Yell at them? I mean, it's
use harsh language.
Yeah, and I know jumping ahead, but I like yelled at the TV when she knocked out the marshal and then picked up his fully loaded rifle and then just tossed it aside. and didn't take it with her. I'm like, what are you, stupid?
Yeah. And she's not. She's like one of the smartest people.
Yeah.
So smart, such a good planner, so resourceful.
Right.
That it doesn't jibe to see Maggie make stupid decisions like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, but that's later Maggie. We're talking about early Maggie here. But then, then the what has been, what's going on with these characters we know, which is very vague, which the big one you have is exactly how much time has passed. I mean, when we finally see the kid, he looks a few years older than when we last saw him.
Yeah.
He looks like he's like 13, maybe 14.
Yeah.
And when we last saw him, he was, I don't know, what would you say, like 9 or 10 maybe?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, definitely.
So
there's been some kind of time jump, but it's not clear.
Yeah, it really isn't. But then the bigger question that I had was, where are we that there's this new Babylon that is sprung up, and they have marshals, and apparently they have electricity because the bar has like neon signs that are working, and you know what I mean, and all of the sort of civilization that they have somehow been able to maintain. And you saw that Marshall's truck, it looked brand new.
Mm-hmm.
Right, much like the Padre truck that Grace was driving. It had the nice shiny New Babylon Marshall sticker on the side and all that stuff. It looked like it rolled right off the showroom. So that was really jarring, that we're just like, really? So there's like this other community that's not the Commonwealth, that's not anything we've ever seen before, but it's obviously very well established.
And far-reaching. Like you got the sense that they have a large reach. Yeah. And that's why that kind of stuff doesn't make sense to me. If they were some kind of local outfit, like if the bartender woman had been like, oh, they own this town and the surrounding communities. Okay, that makes more sense.
Right.
But they, they followed Negan. And like I said, it feels like they have some kind of long reach, long arm of the law.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But for it to be a brand new community that obviously is well established because they're dressed well, they had good weapons, they had a good vehicle.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, they had a vehicle with the damn boat strapped to the top.
Right. They had quality cowboy hats.
Oh God, yes, did they? Yeah.
At this point in the apocalypse, you should have really, really bad cowboy hats, but they had really good ones. Maybe they got them at the Negan leather jacket store. It's possible.
It's possible. Maybe right next door to the leather jacket store was the cowboy hat store. We just didn't see it.
It's possible.
But then also, when they introduced the Marshall character, for me, I immediately went to, okay, so this is like The Fugitive or the old Incredible Hulk show with Bill Bixby, where you have the dogged reporter that's pursuing, or in the Fugitive's case, it's the Tommy Lee Jones character that's on his trail, right? And so Negan and Maggie, they can't dilly-dally anywhere because that guy is, right behind them, and so it's going to keep driving them forward, keep moving the plot forward. Right. And it's not the most terrible idea. It's just not very original.
Yeah. And of course, you take something that's like a not original idea and put it with like a group of people where like, okay, they're new. We don't understand their reach, but it seems long, but we've never met them before. We've never had any kind of connection with them before. It feels it just feels bizarre. Like it feels unattached to the story. Unattached to the greater canon of Walking Dead. So it's just it's hard to sort of connect it with all of those other pieces. Yeah, I did. I made a comment in my notes that one of the things I did really enjoy was they had sort of like a little mini Fear the Walking Dead Easter eggy sort of connection, and it's just me knowing like all of the private lives of everybody in the world, but
Stalker.
I know. The actress who played the bar owner, the woman, her name in real life, that's Michelle Hurd, and she's pretty well-known actress. She's done like guest spots on pretty much everything. She is married to Garrett Dillahunt, who played John Dory.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, she is not credited in this episode.
Which is interesting. It's funny because I thought I saw someone comment online somewhere where they're like, I thought that was Michelle Hurd, but I guess not. So I don't know. Maybe she just didn't uncredited. Who knows? Maybe she just wanted to be like, I want my whole family to have Walking Dead connections. Or maybe she's like, I want to secure my place at the conventions from here on out. And The Walking Dead is the way to do that.
I mean, it could be, although I will tell you just from past experience, most of the time when someone is in a show like that prominently, I mean, she had a lot of lines and a lot of scenes, and she's not in the credits. It's a dispute over money. Yeah. Or some contract issue that she did not agree with the showrunners and they couldn't work it out, and so she's not listed. Which is a shame because she's really talented and I've seen her in so many other little things. And when I saw her, I was like, ooh, I'd be okay with like we show up back at this bar a couple of more times and we see Michelle Hurd a couple more times. But that didn't happen. No, that did not happen. It did not happen. But anyway, well, we could see her again.
Yeah. So we jump right into they she crazily finds Negan. The mechanics of that, that's one of those things that like they get a pass. Like on Fear, we'd be going crazy, but logically, could she have easily found Negan like that? I don't know. I don't think so, but again, they get a little bit of a pass because of their connections with the main series, etc. But I don't know. I just think it's a little convenient. All of the, he appears to have moved further away and was sort of actively on the run at that time, and she was still able to sort of hunt him down. I don't know.
Yeah, that they kind of one of the marshals have a line at some point, and I think it's when he. It's either when he goes into the bar and he's talking, or maybe it's a scene after that, but he says something like this this woman has been hunting Negan down for as long as they have.
Right.
And what I took from that was, oh, that's Maggie. So Maggie has been, tracking him down. But then I have a question of, well, if she's busy tracking Negan down, then how was she tracking the guys that took Herschel? And did she do that first? In which case, how much time has passed from when they took Herschel to where they are now? If she's been trying to find Negan for a long, I don't know. Just again, they tried to make sense, but they kind of confused me at the same time. And then the other question I have is, what happened to Negan? What happened to his wife and their unborn child and all that stuff? That at least Maggie glossed over.
I know Maggie posed the question, but he didn't answer it. So I'm hoping that will. Out of all of the stuff that I hope that they revisit, they definitely have to get back there. I mean, it feels like something tragic happened, whether it was something as simple as she kicked him out or what have you, or did something worse happen, which, you don't want to think about. I think, and I don't want to make suppositions because we have no evidence either way, one way or the other. But I feel like if something tragic had happened to Annie and the kid, I think he would be in more of a sort of downward spiral. Does that make sense? Like, I feel like that this is just like a physical separation between them as opposed to something bad happened. Okay. I don't know. Just my gut tells me that, he's been more in touch with his feelings and who he is as a person those last few years. And he was so excited about being a dad to begin with that I think, yes, this world is terrible, and you have to be prepared for the inevitability of terrible things happening to people you care about. But I think it would. I don't want to say it would break him, but I think he would appear more broken now if something really, really bad. That's just my sense. That's the way they played Negan the last little bit of the main series. So I mean, he is a badass and he's been known for hiding his emotions. So it's entirely possible that she could have been, completely devoured by zombies in front of him. Anything's possible, but I just, my gut instinct is that something more behavioral happened. He did something bad that made him, be on the run to these, and whatever that was, maybe that was maybe that was like a physical breaking point for them. I don't know.
The marshals say he killed a magistrate from their whatever it is, the New Babylon, and 4 other people. That's why they're after him.
Okay.
But again, he then later on tells Maggie, whatever they say I did, it didn't happen the way they're saying it did. So he has his version of what happened. And again, you're right. We're probably going to find out more. But I think that Annie and the kid are dead. I think that
You think so?
That's they just didn't want to deal with those characters. They wanted to have Negan be by himself, because otherwise, why would he go on that mission if they were still around? You know what I mean?
Right.
It makes it's easier for them to launch their story if he is by himself on the run. Now, granted, he did have the kid with him there at the beginning, but again, she didn't say anything. You know what I mean? She's not his child. It's someone he's taking care of, which is a Negan thing, right? He loves kids and wants to take care of them. So I see that, but yeah, I would be very surprised if Annie is somewhere out there and something happened and she kicked him out or whatever. I just don't see that. I think that clearly those two characters are dead. So yeah.
Look at us going 50-50. You got one, I've got the other.
There we go.
See what happens.
Alrighty.
Maybe it's a combination. Maybe she kicked him out and then she was killed. Who knows?
Well, if it turns out that I'm wrong, then I owe you a Coke.
Okay, I'll take you up on that. Make it a diet if you could.
Whoa.
I just put a point in there too, before we get into like the because the big thing is obviously the jump over to Manhattan and all of the stuff that happened over there. But I put that, she describes to him who the person is that has Herschel, yada yada. It's this guy, the Croat, who was a part of his crew for a bit, and he, basically, I guess you could say he learned everything about being a leader from Negan, as it were. You know what I mean? That's how they played it. But, and I don't think that's a terrible premise. But I think I put down that I hate the idea of another big bad being someone who learned everything from Negan, including the whole give me half your stuff kind of idea, because that's what Maggie said. He just like sort of his people showed up and wanted stuff from their community that they had put together, and they took Herschel as a sort of like, bring me my stuff or you don't get your kid back or blah blah blah. So I just felt like it's a little it would have been easier if they had, sure, he could be someone that maybe had a connection with Negan in the past, but if he didn't do things the way Negan did, I think that would have been even more interesting. I saw how he did it. Here's how I'm going to do it. Right. Like this is my take on it. So, again, it's a small thing, but I just was like, they could have done something different here. Just tiny.
It's all plot to get the whole point of why would she when they announced the show, you and I spent a lot of time when we would talk about it about why would Maggie ever want to be with Negan again, right? We kind of came to the conclusion that at the end of the main show, Maggie had evolved her position on Negan where she didn't want to kill him, but she doesn't want to be around him. And so how can you reconcile that philosophy with, hey, you want to help me go get my kid back? You know what I mean? Or you want to help me on some mission or whatever. And so, and I think we even said, maybe it's Herschel is in trouble and, Negan is going to be there to help. Because we were at the time we were going with, well, because he loves kids. He's a big proponent of don't hurt the kids or you got to deal with me. And so that's kind of the thing. And so that they kind of doubled down on this by saying, well, not only is it a kid that's in trouble, but the person that's got him is someone that Negan already knows. So he might be able to have kind of the inside, scoop on what that person's all about. And like you said, it's not terrible, but the thing that bothers me is that this is a guy that we've never seen before. Right? He was never in the Saviors. We never saw him. And by Negan's own description, he's like, he was the most psycho guy in the whole group, and it's like, well, then where was he when you were in the Savior War? Don't you think you'd want like the crazy psycho guy to be out there screwing with Rick Grimes and his people? So that kind of bothers me a little bit of this. Not only is it, it's a savior, a former savior, but it's the crazy one. That
of course.
I thought that was a little bit, but you're right. It's not the worst idea, and I love the actor who plays him. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to watching him do stuff. But I think they could have cast that dude as just, a guy that nobody had ever seen before, and it would have worked.
Yeah. I think that extra layer wasn't something that was absolutely needed. You know what I mean? Like you said, they could have pulled on the whole kid heartstrings and all of that, and you owe me and all of, that would have played just fine. And we even, when we were talking about that, when we were like, why would they ever do this? Why would they ever work together? We said it has to be something to do with Herschel because it's the only thing that they have in common is not wanting anything bad to happen to him. And we were right. It is something about Herschel, but like those extra layers, like about the guy and all this other stuff is, I don't think they needed to do that. Could have just as easily been, your run of the mill weirdo.
Yeah. Right. Well, I mean, they could have even, if they wanted to make it someone Negan was familiar with, it could have just been somebody that the Saviors ran into and ultimately left alone because he was friggin' nuts and killed a bunch of Saviors, and Negan's like, let's not mess with him, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
Right? That could have worked.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
You miss out on Lauren Cohen getting to go, which was a great little moment. Yeah. But still, I think, again, like we said, it would have been something that was a little more original. But again, let's see what happens.
Yeah. I did, and again, one more line before of jibber jabber before we get into like the details of the whole Manhattan stuff. The Rangers, these guys that are going after Negan, I had a thought, and I wonder what you thought too. Since they are, like we said, like they've got some sort of far-reaching. They've got some territory. I'm curious, based on the way they're dressed, and I have no other information to go with this, but I wonder if they're connected in some way with the people Michonne fell in with.
Oh, that's interesting.
Well, I'm just curious because we're heading in that sort of direction because she was heading that area too. Remember, it was like Virginia, and then like the next stop was supposed to be like in that sort of Pittsburgh, Delaware, New York sort of area. And our assumption was when she ran into those people, we felt like, I don't remember why at the time, but there was this feeling that she was somewhere in the like Pennsylvania or something. Like it just the topography of where she was made sense, like either West Virginia or Pennsylvania, which would still sort of, that's a big amount of, space to cover, but they were on the move. The only thing is they were very attached to horses, it seemed like, and these guys were in cars. Now that doesn't mean that down the, they didn't have any cars at all. I don't know. I felt like the vibe they gave off and how they, the way they had rules and things. I don't know. I wasn't, and I don't know what it was. There's like a some kind of sense out of them that just, I thought of it and I'm like, oh, I wonder if that's possible. Could be nothing. Could be absolutely nothing. But this universe likes to do little Easter eggs like that tie things together. And I certainly wouldn't put it past them. And, and since we're in that sort of general area and you and I both said, here's this group that they're a part of that, they've got some kind of long reach and we've never heard or seen them before. And this is all brand new. Could they have some sort of prior connection that we just hadn't seen yet? But I don't know. I'm just spitballing it. So I'm wondering if anybody else thought of it or if they hear that and go, oh, that's possible. I don't know.
Yeah. I think your first thought of the people that we see Michonne at the end there, it's very covered wagons and settlers and, like the 1880s kind of look. They're all wearing like, hide skin clothes, right? From like the buffalo or whatever. And they're all in like wagons that are horse drawn. There's no technology at all. And that's, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years before this moment.
Yeah.
Right. And so it could be them, but I think it's probably not. I think they will keep all of that for the show, the Rick Grimes and Michonne show.
That's probably true.
So this is just some group we've never seen before, which begs the question: who the hell are they?
Right.
Right.
Who the hell are these people?
Yeah. And my note on the Marshals is that in this episode they are super cartoony.
Yeah,
just very, very not real people. Like when he is in the bar and he is got the picture of Negan, right? And he's like, have you seen this man? He goes by the name of Negan. And then he talks about, we're going to execute him, but we're not going to just hang him or shoot him. No, we're going to like string him up from his feet and cut him from his groin to his head, nice and slow. And I'm like, who would ever talk like that? You know what I mean? That is just an unbelievable line. And then later on, when he feeds Michelle Hurd to the ghouls on the other side of the fence for, aiding and abetting. So there's no judge in their justice system, right? The marshal is just able to immediately go to dispensing punishment. Anyway, after he feeds her to them, he turns around to the kid, the junior marshal, and he's like, I didn't want to do that. I had to do that. I was just like, oh God, So, but again, it's only the first episode. They're feeling things out, and things can change, and they could soften him up or whatever. But yeah, I so far the marshals are all either they're dumb as a box of rocks, which are the two other marshals we see in this episode. The kid, the dipshit kid, and then the guy whose idea of watching the door is to stand right next to it while the ghouls smash through it and kill him. But then now we're left with the one guy, Armstrong, and he's going to be the nemesis that's kind of always on their trail kind of thing. But so far very cartoony. And
absolutely.
We just need to know more.
Yeah. And I think that'll come. I think we'll learn more about this. They had to get rid of the other two because we only have time to learn about one person. We don't have time to learn about these other two guys. We can only have this one guy. So we'll have the lead guy and we'll learn a little bit more about him and his backstory and, whatever. And he'll come to find out more about Negan, and he'll eventually decide, I'm not going to go after you, man, because I understand who you are as a person and I see your soul or whatever, whoever the knows what that is, it'll happen.
Right.
So we do get the jump over to Manhattan, and so many great Manhattan details. But I did want to say the one thing I loved the choice of, as they are crossing the Hudson to get over to like lower Manhattan, the Hudson is like filled with, floaters, as it were, all these like floating ghouls. And it was great. I thought that was a really great choice, because you got to figure it's millions of people that lived on Manhattan. And I liked that little tidbit where they were like, they tried to, they closed the tunnels and the bridges because they thought maybe if we can contain it.
Right. And
then all they did was they ended up stranding millions of people in a really small island. But it suffice to say, there's got to be tons of, ghouls just floating around in the Hudson on any given day. And I made a note there that, they should do that more on other shows. It's something that should be, it's a detail that I think gets forgotten. Every body of water, pretty much everywhere, should have a ghoul at some point stuck in the water or unable to get out of the water, or, and in this case, the Hudson is as deep as, portions of the ocean, for crying out loud, because it's a pretty large mouth of water that comes out there. But so it's not like you can't touch the bottom on the Hudson, that's for sure. So they're just floating around, devil may care. And I just thought that was a really cool image of the boat just sort of cutting through all of these ghouls. And some of them are kind of bloated and gross looking, and the boat is just like bumping up against them. And I don't know. I just thought it was really great imagery. And like I said, I think it's something that gets forgotten about. And they dove right into it. No pun intended.
No, wow, I see what you did there.
I did not mean to do that at all.
I did not do that. I kind of go the other way. I didn't really care for that scene.
Oh, really?
I mean, the human body, it will float for a while, but then it will fill up with water and sink. And so why would they be on the surface? I mean, it's kind of been established that ghouls do not go into the water. And so, again, it was a cool image. It kind of had some, I think they got inspired by Titanic when at the end, when they're rowing the boat through everybody and they're all in their life vests and they're frozen and white and, dead and all that stuff. And it was cool, but I thought, that wouldn't happen. So I was not as impressed with it as you were, but I liked the look of Manhattan when she's looking through the binocular thing she has.
Yep.
I think the fear guys could watch that opening and go, oh, that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
I don't think they went far enough for my tastes. You saw some of the buildings had been overgrown with weeds and nature, but I think just what Lisa Dupree said last week with the kudzu, like every street in Manhattan would be covered with growth, with vegetation. Yeah. There would be no more bare concrete anywhere. It would be all overgrown, and I think a big majority of the buildings would have collapsed by now. They would have fallen after 10 years.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it's tough too, because I think they want, the whole point of doing a show in Manhattan is that you get the buildings, so they have to keep some of the tall buildings to make it visually look like what we want it. You know what I mean? Like the we want to identify with the, they didn't, I couldn't tell. There weren't really any identifiable buildings. Like I didn't look at them and go, oh, there's the Chrysler building or whatever.
That was the only one you could see was the Chrysler building. Everything else, they did not show like the 9/11 tower. They did not show any of the other famed quote unquote skyline of Manhattan. But you're totally right, and I totally get it, and I love that stuff. I think the idea of the abandoned city, you know, when it's just sort of the skeletal remains of the buildings, that's really cool. I love that stuff. It's just I've been ruined by the fact that I know that after like 10, 15 years, that isn't going to be there. They're all going to collapse because, you know, we build crappy things now that need to be maintained.
And if they're not,
they fall. Why are the Great Pyramids and the Great Wall of China still around? Because they're basically big rocks.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they are. I mean, that's why they're still here, you know. So, but yeah, anyway, despite that criticism, I loved that sequence, and I loved it when she saw, you know, the 10,000 ghouls or whatever it was that were kind of on the dock or whatever. That was really cool. And I was kind of hoping we get a little bit more of the, you know, you can't go to Manhattan, you'll die, you know, this sort of idea that the people on the mainland know that if you go to Manhattan, it's a death sentence because it's just overrun with the dead.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And we got none of that. The marshals, they didn't blink when they're like, "Oh, you're going to Manhattan? Well, so are we." Sure. You know,
tuck in. Here we go.
Yeah, you know, and even like I kept waiting for Negan to be, you know, when she's like they're on Manhattan, and he'd be like, "Yeah, well, I'm not going." Yeah, you know what I mean? That if they went there, they're dead. You know that kind. And we got none of that. It was just sort of like, "Oh, okay, let's go." You know, so
hop in. Let's go for a trip.
Yeah.
We were talking about the buildings, and you mentioned the 9/11 building, etc. But I have to say, this is like, and this just a me thing. I'm curious if anybody else felt it, but it's not even just the images, but also the image and the sound of falling bodies in Manhattan. Still, even though it's 22 years later, it just makes me think of 9/11. And I can't, like, if you watch it's like French Guys or whatever, that documentary where they just happened to be in Manhattan that day and they rode with the fire engine and they went up there and they're in the lobby and you hear, you know, it really happening. You know, they're trying to have the base of operations in the base of one of the World Trade Center buildings, and you keep hearing these loud bangs over and over again, and those are bodies falling. Like, I will never get that noise out of my head from that documentary. And when they were doing that, it was the only thing I could think of was during that. I was just like, and that's just a trigger response based on my reaction from that documentary. But I was like, even as long as it's been since that happened, it was the immediate, and I'm not saying whether or not it was good or bad to include it, but to me, that's immediately how that affected me. I mean, it's a very interesting way to weaponize ghouls if you're trying to keep your, you know, strangers out of your city. And, you know, maybe you have like a bunch of them in a closed up room on the 20th floor, and you're like, oh, I'll just push a few out and that'll get them out of here. you know?
Well, I mean, I didn't think they were being pushed out by people. I took them
just natural.
They heard, because you remember the junior marshal tried to make a break for it, and Negan kind of tackles him into like a garbage can that is still there, but it makes a really loud noise.
Yeah.
And so, and also when they first get there, like the junior marshal's like, where's all the dead? Because there aren't any, they're gone. And, you know, again, Maggie, brave as can be, just walking right down the street. And I'm like, really? Is that the best idea? Because, you know, if there's like 1 million ghouls here, you know, it's kind of like Rick in episode 2. When he goes clippity-cloppeting with his horse into Atlanta, and he comes around the corner, and it's like, oh, you know what? You're dead now.
Yeah,
right.
I miscalculated here.
Yeah, you know, and yet they get there and there aren't any, and then they make that loud noise, and so I just kind of equated that to there are ghouls in the buildings, that people that died there because they couldn't leave, or maybe they were eaten or whatever, and they were up there, and then when they heard the noise, They
they just followed the noise. And,
they just stepped out the window, and because a lot of the windows you have to assume are broken by this point, and down they came. But yeah, it was a very chilling sequence when they're just smashing into everything around them, and you're like, holy crap,
Yeah, because it's at that speed it would kill you.
Oh God, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So what else?
Cockroaches.
Oh, Jesus Christ, the cockroaches. As soon as there was like, no, go ahead. You go.
I was just gonna say the only thing that I was disappointed is that they were all CGI.
Yeah. That didn't disappoint me at all, because the fact that I knew they were fake didn't make me scratch the back of my neck while I was watching the show.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. My favorite part there is that when they're starting to come out in force, and Negan gets one near his mouth or something, he's just like, nope, and then he gets up and runs away.
Yeah, it's like I've gone against the ghouls in the past. I know how to fight them. I know there's a big horde of them coming. I would rather face that than this, and that's
yeah. Yeah, that was disgustingly cool. There's no doubt that was.
Yeah. And I think those are those areas where, again, you can take something where you're like, wouldn't it be cool if, because Manhattan is known, there's trash everywhere. They don't have the same kind of alley system that we do in Chicago, where you can sort of hide your trash behind your building. No, the trash is on the sidewalk and it's everywhere. Right. And so, if it's a little sunny out and things bake a little bit, it gets a little smelly, and so there's that. So to sort of go, hey, wouldn't it be cool if, and we had all of this here and it turned into this. If you've got a show that's written well and has them in a circumstance that makes sense, then your wouldn't it be cool if this happened moment all ultimately makes more sense to the plot of the story. Now, how they still had plastic bags that were still
that was the only thing about that scene that I kind of I raised my eyebrows at. I'm like, really? So we're talking 10, 12, 13, 15 years since the end of the universe, and these garbage bags are still intact. They haven't degraded in the sun and the snow, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
For all that time. But again, the scene was so cool, I didn't care.
Yeah, I forgave all of it. I was like, trash bags? I was like, never mind, it's awesome.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's where they get the grace of that, because you're like, okay, I know that they did this and they put some thought into it, even though the whole trash bag thing, they put thought into where they place it, how they do it. They had a funny line in the middle of it, and everyone's reactions about it made sense with their characters. It's okay. It's okay that they had the trash bags there. I forgive them.
Yeah, me too.
They're okay. I thought too that the we get our first look at the Croat and what he's going to be all about. We get this scene where they're he's terrorizing Herschel and is interrupted, and they're like, he's getting away. They go and look, and there's some dude that's some guy that we don't know the circumstances, but he's trying to get away from the Croat and his guys. And his way to get away is he's got a zip line, sort of like the hardware you would snap onto a rope to actually have a zip line work, the handle portion.
Oh yeah.
And he just snaps onto a wire, and they're 30 floors up, and he clips onto a wire to go over to another building across the way. And when he did that, I was like, this is cool. If that's, I'm afraid of heights, so, I would never do it. But as a way to sort of travel and avoid the, ghouls down on the street level,
sure,
it's practical. It makes sense as long as you hang on tight. And he was hanging on tight, but, they cut the line.
Oh, yeah. He falls 20 stories. And apparently it's a new record.
Yeah, exactly. But I did get a very, with the, you know, that ziplining thing and some of the other scenes, I got a real like Escape from New York vibe from this.
Yeah,
you know?
I could see that. I could totally see that. Yeah,
Yeah.
there was definitely it had a similar look to that movie, to the way they depicted New York, you know, with all the junked out cars
Yeah.
and, you know, the crap all over and the buildings falling apart and stuff. So yeah, I totally see that. And I agree with you. The zip lining thing, it does make sense, because you would have to think that you cannot just walk around you know, at ground level.
Yeah.
Because there's too many ghouls. There's too many of the dead. You know, you just can't go anywhere. So,
and the buildings in New York are like right on top of each other. They're so close to each other that it would make sense to come up with some kind of transportation system that involved not going down to the ground level. Plus, there's no elevators. So you'd spend half the day going 30 flights. If it's easier to just, you know, zip, 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 zip to get down, then yes, that's the way you go.
Yeah, and you could clear out the first couple of floors and then block off the stairwells and stuff so that no more ghouls can get up there, and now you have kind of safe spots you can get to without, you know, like you said, going out onto the ground. So yeah, I totally bought it. I thought it was fun.
Cool. I love it too. I wanted to put in a you know, a nice high five to you know, regardless of like their choices for like the character development of the Croat. I love some, you pronounce his name, it's Zako Ivanek, and he's great. He's a well-known character actor.
Oh God, yeah.
He's been in a million things, and I think he's a really great addition. He's just got such a great sort of, he plays a really good villain, because his kind of villain is a little bit more cerebral. He's like a thinking man's villain. He's not the villain who's gonna like beat the shit out of you. Right. You know, there's just a vibe to him that I think is going to work really well. So I'm very interested to see where they go with him. So yeah, I have a lot of hopes tied up in his portrayal of this guy. Yes. I think he's going to, you know, knock it out of the park.
Oh yeah, he's certainly going to have fun with it.
Oh, for sure.
So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. What does the character, you know, how does the character look at Negan? You know, is Negan someone he misses? Is Negan someone he always wanted to kill? You know, we're going to have to find out what he really thinks about Negan now. So
yeah, that'll be interesting to see. Let's see here. The only thing I've got left for my notes is I saw someone write an online review that I thought was hilarious. So I just it was just a one-liner, just those stupid Google reviews. When you Google something and they're like, I watched this for 10 minutes and it was crap. Yeah. But someone put, and they go, I see where it's headed. Maggie and Negan become lovers, but in the end, she kills him. I won't be watching again. And I'm like, that is like, I couldn't. If it's one thing, I know that there's tension between those two. I think that a lot of that comes from, I think Negan leads with his sexuality in a lot of things. I think he thinks he's charming and he's a real catch and all that other stuff. And that's how he coasts through life is part of that. Right. So I think that him injecting his sort of like charming sexual vibes into stuff doesn't mean that that's going to happen. At all.
Yeah, I think we'd all be a little surprised if Maggie were to ever, get into bed with him. But I think he, like you said, you know, I think he is constantly doing, you know, the Negan routine because he knows it drives her crazy.
Yes, that too. Because he likes to get under her skin.
Yeah.
No matter what, that's he's that guy.
And he knows there's, you know, it only takes like one or two buttons and he is in her head like all the way. So yeah.
You've got some points there too. I want to make sure we hit all of your stuff too.
You know, again, I was a little disappointed that right away we see that, you know, I guess it really doesn't matter what Walking Dead show we're on. It's just I guess I just have to get used to the fact that electricity and working cars and boats and brand new clothes and brand new signs, town signs. It's just a thing that somehow, enough of the old world has survived that stuff still works, even though logically we know it doesn't. It wouldn't. It does. And,
yeah.
It's just okay. It's just disappointing to me because, as we pointed out previously on the main show, other than Daryl's motorcycle, they didn't have cars after a while, and they used cars as wagons that horses pulled, and all that. And now we've gone from that back to now there's electricity and there's bars that are open serving alcohol and have got the cat house down the street and all. It's just like, okay, where did all this stuff come from? So that was a little disappointing. I like that Maggie has the Rosa Club's boot knife from the movie From Russia with Love, if you remember that. I thought that was kind of fun. And the fact that she, keeps using it, she doesn't forget she has it. I thought that was cool.
Yes.
I also like that when they catch her at the bar when she first is looking for Negan, they hold her down on the bar, and Michelle Hurd is going to give her the Chinatown nose. Which I don't know when the last time you saw Chinatown is, but yeah, they cut Roman Polanski, the director, actually plays the character, and they catch Jack Nicholson and they put a knife in his nostril and then cut it from the base of the nostril all the way up to the nose. It just looks like it would hurt so bad. Oh my God. So for the rest of the movie, he's got this massive bandage on his nose because they basically almost cut it off. But anyway, I thought that was kind of a nice little weird little pull, little nod, to something from the past.
Yeah.
Let's see. I did write down one line that I thought was pretty cool where, Maggie is giving Negan the business. I think it's after she has that dream where we see all the flashbacky stuff with Glenn.
Yes.
Which I thought was fun. Kind of a nice little way to go. Oh yeah, Negan did beat the living crap out of him. Yeah, that's right.
Yes, he did.
But Negan is kind of yelling at Maggie about her, her attitude and her, the way she looks at him, and he says something like, after all these years, you still think I'm the bad guy. I'm not. No one is. Or you know what, Maggie? Maybe everyone is. And then she's looking at him, and then he goes, ask yourself one question. How many husbands and fathers have you killed? And it's a really good line, and it kind of goes back to the fear thing with Morgan, where, everybody has trauma and everybody has done bad stuff at this point. Right.
It doesn't minimize what he did. Right. But in the larger scheme of things, it includes him in with, it's certainly not any better or worse than any of the other crap that, and she's created some orphans out there for sure.
Yeah, right. She killed Xander Berkeley without blinking.
Yep.
Right.
She didn't even hesitate.
Yeah. So yeah. I think that's, I think he is absolutely 100% correct, but at the same time, she is totally justified in wanting him to be dead, without a doubt. You know what I mean? They both have strong positions on that thing, and I just go back to, if Negan had changed the way that he killed Abraham and her husband, Glenn, we wouldn't be having this discussion. If the Saviors had taken them prisoner and then had a trial and presented the evidence and all the people that they killed at the satellite station, and then the punishment was 2 of you are going to be hung, and they picked those 2 at random, it would still be terrible, but you wouldn't be like, he's a monster, you'd be like, no, they kind of are getting justice in a way. It could be worse. They could have killed all of them, so.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, it's the fact that it's the method was so brutal and so shocking that it just makes it worse. Right.
Of course.
But anyway, I like that. I thought that was a cool line. And then we have to mention Rat in the Mouth Ghoul.
Do we have to?
We do. We totally do. Rat in the Mouth Ghoul. I don't know who you are, sir, but I want to have a beer with you. Okay. I just want to say that right now. So
kudos to you.
Yeah. And then also, we did not mention the mysterious, old woman that blows out the match at the end.
Yeah. She obviously, if you're paying attention, folks, looks like there's some old woman who's looking down from the ledge.
Right. She's on the roof of some building or something. Yep.
Yeah. So she then appears when, they're in like that back room of the dry cleaners. Yeah. And she has that mat, that blows out that match. So I hope we learn more about who that is in the next episode. But
yeah, you like to think we will, because that's kind of literally she blows the match out, and then we get the little bit with the Croat. We don't see Maggie or Negan or the Marshal again in the episode, and so we have to figure out who that is and why is she gonna be helpful. Maybe we don't really know. I mean, is she a threat? We don't know. We have to see what that's gonna happen with that.
Yeah, unclear if she's a harm or a hindrance or a help. We'll see.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I think we covered everything for
I think so.
Both shows.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And it's only 2 hours. Woohoo!
I know. I'm impressed. It could have been longer, folks. I mean, you know how we can be. So what we're gonna do? We're gonna go ahead, as usual, take a quick break. We did get some good listener feedback. We're gonna go through it pretty quickly. Try and get you guys out of here quicker. So we'll be back in just a minute to discuss our listener feedback and what's coming up on the podcast.
Stick around. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is Patricia Tallman, and you're listening to the Aim for the Head podcast with Diana and Steve. Don't forget to always aim for the head, because body shots just don't work, and I should know.
Hi, I'm Ross Marquand, and you're listening to the Aim for the Head podcast with Diana and Steve. And remember, always aim for the head, because body shots just don't work.
Hey everybody, we are back. We're going to jump right into our feedback that we received this week. So yeah, let's do that. So first up, coming in from the international desk, as usual, we have an email from our pal Andy from Germany. Hey Andy,
What's going on, Andy?
Thanks so much for writing in, as usual. Andy sent in some feedback for last week's episode of Fear the Walking Dead. And that was the Grace Dies episode.
Yes.
More Time Than You Know. I was like, what was the title of that episode?
Yes.
I blocked it out emotionally. I'm sure you can understand why. All right. So Andy writes in via the email and says, "Hi, Diana and Steve. You are right. This episode was shice."
Scheisse.
Oh, scheisse.
Scheisse.
Nice. Now I know how to spell it.
Ah.
I didn't realize it was scheisse, and I thought that he was saying shice, which is, it's spelled SHICE, and I was like, shitty nice? Like combining words. All right, so scheisse. Less nonsense than the last one, but even more boring. A meaningless back and forth about Ghoulie Grace's death.
I see what he did there.
Commercials. About railroads. It was established in the main show that the old railways can't be used anymore, so the Commonwealth had to build a new one. It's a pity. Now that the main show is over and they did a time jump, they could do so much interesting stuff. Travel to Alexandria or mess with the CRM. Instead, we get this nonsense. Their viewer numbers are below 500,000 now. I bet at the end of the season, they will have less viewers than World Beyond had in the end. Greetings from Germany, Andy. Yes, that's a good point about the railroads. They did make a big point about saying that the CRM was working on, not the CRM, the Commonwealth, apologies, that the Commonwealth was working on laying down new tracks and doing new things so that they could get trains moving again to sort of connect communities. So, that's I had forgotten all about that. Thank you, Andy, for bringing that up.
And he's absolutely right. The only thing I wonder is, did the Commonwealth get to wherever Padre is, which again we don't really know, so sure, I suppose it's totally possible. So yeah.
Well, geography is just like, that's a red herring on that show.
No, it's not their strong point.
Yeah, and Delaware, Texas, don't forget.
Yeah, that's right.
Thanks for writing in, Andy.
Thanks,
we love
Andy.
hearing from you. Thank you.
It's amazing. All right, moving along now. This is for the 2 episodes for this week. So 8.6 of Fear and 1.1 of Dead City. We get a note from our pal Teresa Harper via the Facebook.
Hey, Teresa.
Hello, Teresa. And this is short and sweet. She says, I love them both. What can I say? I'm a sucker for anything Walking Dead. And I'm glad that you enjoyed them. That's awesome. And thank you for sharing our thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's easy to sort of, if you love them and you just let it go. Teresa was able to let it go and just enjoy. So good for you, Teresa.
Good for you. Absolutely. That's the whole point of this, is you should be enjoying watching the episodes, right? I mean,
ultimately it is entertainment, right?
Yes, exactly.
Next up, we got some via the Facebook feedback from our pal Alma Contreras. Hey, Alma.
What's going on, Alma?
Yeah, love hearing from you. Alma wrote in and said, OMG, I thought Dead City was very good. It was intense and scary, and I loved seeing Badass Maggie, but also seeing Negan doing his thing. I can't wait to hear y'all's thoughts. Well, you just did, so I hope you agree with our thoughts. Yeah. We'll find out next week.
and yeah, we're right there with you. That Dead City was pretty good so far, and I think we're all excited for it. And I also think it's interesting to note that Alma did not mention anything about Fear at all.
I don't think that's interesting at all. I think she chose not to watch it and chose not to give feedback. And you go, girl.
That's right.
Don't watch that crap show.
Clearly, Alma is very, very smart.
Thanks for writing in, Alma. We hope to hear more about what your thoughts are on Dead City next week as well.
Absolutely. Keep it coming. All right, so moving on, we go back on the international desk, and we're going across the pond to jolly old England to our superfan, Bev, too.
Hey,
Hello,
Bev.
Bev. How are you again? And she says, hi, guys. Let's just get Fear out of the way first. Yeah, I hear you. I totally hear you. She goes, well, what can I say other than if this is the last time we see Morgan, it will possibly be the most disappointing end to a story that I've ever seen. To have such an important character leave the franchise as part of such a crappy storyline would be unforgivable. Yes, you are correct. It is unforgivable.
Yes.
She goes, I found this episode frustrating in so many ways. For example, was June even needed? All she did was stand around. That's true.
That's a fair point.
Did anyone give a flying monkey's anus, which I love that phrase.
I'm using that. I swear to God I'm using it.
A flying monkey's anus. Yes. About the 2 bad guys. I think the brother and sister were the most poorly written characters in the entire show. Mo flip-flopped yet again. Madison was wishy-washy and lacked any kind of energy. And while I agree with you about the poorly written status of those 2 characters, let's not forget Virginia.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I think that Ginny would give those 2 a run for their money and the most unbelievable bad guy leader that we've come across on this show so far.
Just to show how much you emotionally block out. I forget all about Ginny all the time.
Right? Ginny and
lovely.
Her little sister Dakota. Remember all the good time? Oh, wait.
Toasted Dakota.
Yeah, right. Toast, crunchy Dakota. All right, so she goes on to say, the only bright light at the end of this dark tunnel was the final scene, when I believe it's Strand listening to Madison's message. I just hope if Victor is indeed coming back to be reunited with Madison, that they come up with a storyline worthy of Coleman's talents. I don't know if that was Strand. I have to go back and watch it, but I thought when the person leans over, you see some of their hair and it looked blonde and long. So, but again, we'll have to see. Who knows with these guys? It would just be nice to see Strand, period.
Yes. And I think that one of the things that they're going to do is that Madison doing this whole thing where she's broadcasting a message will mean that she's going to end up reuniting with all of these other people who are from her past. So whether that is or isn't Strand in that final scene, I think that is the reason her doing this is going to be the catalyst for us actually seeing these characters again, like seeing Strand again, seeing hopefully Luciana again. She's alive, right? Somewhere?
Well, both Coleman Domingo and Denai Garcia are still in the credits.
That's right.
We have to assume that eventually they might show up, maybe, but we don't know.
One would think and hope, so we'll see.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on, Bev says, now to Dead City. The jury's still out on this one. It's great to see Maggie and Negan again, but I'm having trouble understanding a few things. Maybe you guys will be able to figure these out for me.
Ooh. Let's get to work.
And I think some of these are concerns we might have already addressed, because I believe we also have these concerns.
We have some concerns. We're being cautious.
We're being cautious. But she says, when the main show ended, Maggie was working with Alexandria and the Commonwealth. Why is she dealing with a gang that destroyed her home on her own? Good question.
Mm-hmm.
Why have some kind of law system in place if you can't turn to them for assistance when someone kidnapped your son? That's a good point too.
Mm-hmm.
How did the new legal system get set up, and is it linked to our other communities? Also a good question. We don't know. And how far ahead have we jumped, and how do all these changes affect the Rick and Michonne show? And that's a big one that I don't think we will get an answer to. When Rick and Michonne show happens, we'll go, oh, okay. She goes, besides some unanswered questions, I enjoyed it. However, my husband said it completely lacked jeopardy, as we knew neither of the main characters would die, and we didn't know anyone else enough to care what happened to them. Well, that's all my thoughts. Looking forward to hearing yours. Bev in still warm, but not so sunny Devon. So, you know what? Here's a little bit for you can bring back at your husband for his argument, and that is these characters don't have any more plot armor. So it's true. It's unlikely that they're going to be killed, but you cannot rule it out.
Correct.
So, certainly in the first episode, you're right. I'd be very surprised if the Maggie and Negan show killed either Maggie or Negan in episode 1.
Yeah, that feels very surprising.
Yeah, but I think, you know what, as we move to the end of the season, you never know. Jeffrey Dean Morgan or Lauren Cohen might be like, I've had enough. I'm good.
Yeah.
And then that, one of those characters dies, right? So
yeah,
I think it's at least possible.
Yeah. And I would say, tell your husband this as well, which is, yes, we know the main characters wouldn't die, and we didn't know anyone else enough to care about what happened to them. That's true. But keep in mind, we were also stuck for a few years with a show that had way too many characters and, plot points for all of those people. I remind him, too, that it's refreshing to have a show that's literally, it's these two people, and they're really, those two plus maybe Herschel are the only people you're meant to really care about. Mm-hmm. And we don't have to worry about like story arcs for all of these other people, and to put our cares and our worries onto all of those other people. So yes, we don't care about those other side characters, but we're also not taking our feelings and spreading them out over a cast of 35 people. So right. You kind of have to like take the good and the bad with the both of those. So if, so maybe your husband enjoyed having a larger cast with more people to sort of care about. But I was so tired of how large that cast was by the time it was done that I'm relishing at least the idea that we have such a small cast in this show. I'm enjoying that. So maybe he will too if you point it out to him.
There you go.
Who knows? All right. Well, thanks for writing in, Bev. We always love hearing from you.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Bev.
Yeah. Next up via the email is our P1 listener, Alex Baelish. Hello, Alex. I'm sure I've mentioned it before, but I can't wait to jump in with both feet because I started watching From like about a week ago. I need to jump back into it, but Alex does a really great podcast with our friend Lizzie Schmoopy, and they do a podcast about the show From, and they've been getting like interviews with cast members and stuff. So look for it on the Podcastica network. Alex is doing a really great podcast over there. So yeah, just a little plug for our pal. So anyway, so Alex wrote in via the email and says, Diana and Steve, the first segment is better than all of the last 2 years of Fear. Wow, nice to be back in The Walking Dead. Oh my God, I thought that was Michelle Hurd, but she's not in the credits. Yeah, we chatted about that. Maybe something happened there. Definitely Michelle Hurd, but not in the credits.
Yep.
Anyway, so much tension with the cockroaches. No tension, just terribleness. Terrible cockroaches.
It was all terrible.
It was all terrible. Okay, what is it with marshals being so dumb? He's not wrong.
No.
They are the stormtroopers of The Walking Dead. Dude, when the glass starts cracking at the door, you run.
Yeah. Yeah, you could kind of excuse the junior marshal because he's like clearly like this is like day 2 for him.
Yeah, yeah.
But that other guy, he was just an idiot.
Yeah. He continues on and says, they really took a quote, air quotes, dead story and gave such great life to it. See what he did there.
I did.
I hope it is jam-packed the rest of the way. JDM and Lauren Cohen are so amazing together. I really was not that jazzed for this, but I'm so glad I was pleasantly surprised. Worth the wait when the adults take over the show. Look at that. A little shade. I love it, Alex. Well done. As for Fear, who really cares at this point? There is just no life in the show after watching what we just watched. It would be really funny if there was a Talking Dead for Dead City and not for Fear. Ooh.
Yep.
I wonder if they'll do one at the end, like when they have the season finale. You know, it does love a little, promotional fun.
If they do any more talkings for Fear, they will be taped and not with the studio audience. They will be, because they won't chance having those two guys in a place where the fans could tell them what they really think of them. So
yeah, it'd be curious to see if they did one for Dead City though, for the finale.
Yeah,
just because it's a new thing.
It's a new thing. It's JDM and Lauren Cohen. You would think that. I think there's a lot more excitement for Dead City, and I think the majority of the fan base is pretty much checked out with Fear. Like Andy said that the numbers for Fear are getting smaller. Each episode, each season. So it's clearly the fans are like, oh yeah, that show's still on. So yeah.
So we agree with everything you say, Alex. Unsurprisingly.
Yes. Amazing feedback. Thank you so much. And finally, our last piece of feedback comes from our pal Lisa Dupree. Hello, Lisa. And I believe she sent this via the instant messing, I believe.
Yes,
wasn't it like a Facebook message?
Facebook message,
Yeah, the messenger.
Sort of a direct message to us.
Right.
Yes.
She I believe the kids call it sliding into our DMs.
Oh, gross.
Anyway, Lisa said, Fear. Didn't watch it, don't care.
Perfect. That's wonderful.
Right. That should be the tagline for the season. Don't watch it, don't care. Yeah. Dead City, she says, now that, and that is all in caps, is what a freaking apocalypse looks like. Every single thing about Manhattan is so deeply upsetting, from the still groaning bodies in the river to the complete devastation of the city itself. Everything says neglect, violence, and decay, but with more plant life, which that is true. They did show a lot of the vines and plants growing over stuff, which was pretty cool. Mm-hmm. Also, in nearly 40 years of watching horror movies and shows, the closest I've ever come to throwing up is when it started raining walkers.
Yay.
So you and her had similar reactions there.
Clearly, yeah.
She goes, that was horrible. This show may be the one that has me feeling bad for zombies. That's how hellish Manhattan already seems in this show. I saw them shuffling out of the skyscrapers and thought, man, they don't deserve that.
Yeah.
She goes, I'm not going to talk about the roaches. I'm not.
And yet you just did.
And yet she did, right. She goes, it came right on the heels of one of the most upsetting things I've ever seen in a horror show and was really close to making it to the second most upsetting thing. There's a scene in the deeply cheesy Prince of Darkness, also involving bugs, that wins out, but only just. And yeah, Prince of Darkness, it's one of John Carpenter's near masterpiece films. And yes, the scene with the bugs is definitely memorable. Perhaps one day, Diana, we'll have to make you watch it and we can review it. She goes, I will simply say that no one can be surprised at which creatures have survived the apocalypse in New York City.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
'Cause
Along
we get
with
the-
the cockroaches.
We get the roaches and the rats. So
Yeah. Ugh.
she finishes up by saying, "It's really good to see Maggie again. I love her. I was getting a little fatigued with the number of times she and Negan got thrown together on The Walking Dead. Okay, I get it. She hates him. We all do. Glenn was the best. But I do love the character dynamic in spite of myself, so hopefully that gets more interesting over the course of the series and not more two-dimensional."
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
that is her feedback. So Lisa, thank you so much. Amazing points. You know, you're right. I think when we watched clearly the end of the main show, there was kind of the, why is Maggie talking to Negan at all? Why does Negan keep going over to Maggie? You know what I mean? And so here, at least they're trying to construct a reason why they're together. And, so far, I think it works. We just got to kind of see where it's going to go.
Yeah. We'll give them a little bit of rope, but only enough to so they can hang themselves.
Exactly.
We'll see how it goes.
Exactly.
They get a little bit. And before we move on, I just want to include, we got a little bit of feedback from Joe, who wrote in last week, and he wanted to comment and say that, yes, we did pronounce his last name correctly, which is Levine.
Awesome.
We thought it would be that. So thanks, Joe. I appreciate that. You worry because it's in print and you've never pronounced it out loud before, and you don't want to upset someone who listens to your show. And, so great.
Well,
Thank you. I appreciate that.
He has L-A and then a capital V. And so does that love? And so I was, when I saw that, I'm like, oh, I'm just going to pick one and go with it. So yes, I chose wisely.
You chose wisely. Well done. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Next up on the podcast, we will be covering episode 2 of Dead City. Title of the episode is Who's There? We talked about the title a little earlier because it's the same director, correct? The Iacobelli or whatever her last name was.
And I believe Eli Jorn wrote it as well, so it should be the same pair as
sort of pair. Good. Description we got so far is Maggie and Negan encounter native New Yorkers. I love how they worded that. Armstrong revisits a trauma. Armstrong is the guy who's the head ranger there. Mm-hmm. And it says Ginny attempts to adapt to change. Now, Ginny was the young silent girl. We didn't talk that much about her.
Right.
She didn't really add a lot to the episode. Just this girl who's with Negan that's been with him for an undeterminate amount of time that he's been sort of caring for her. Yeah. And in order to do this sort of mission, they had to sort of leave her with another trustworthy group of people. And
it was kind of part of his negotiation to go with Maggie.
Yes, I'll only do this if you can do this for her.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Right. And he does say that he was at some place where she was, and then the marshals started sniffing around for him, and so he left, and she wanted to go with him. I think that's about all the backstory we get, other than the fact that she doesn't talk.
Yeah, she's very traumatic watching, I believe he said parents, or at least family. Her family,
father.
Yeah, watch them die. So she just hasn't spoken since then. So, which that's, it's like Chekhov's gun. At some point in the season, we will have her speak, I'm sure. But yeah, she figured in the sort of clips we got at the end of the episode, not a lot of details in there, but they did show her. It looks like maybe she's going to try and maybe go after Negan, like follow him. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see her show up on Manhattan at some point as well. I think that'd be interesting.
That'd be cool.
And I didn't see it because I watched on the app and I didn't watch.
I saw it.
You did?
I watched it later. I saw it online. I saw it online. That's where it showed up on Instagram, I think. But yeah.
So during the broadcast of Dead City, they did it was like a 20-second teaser sort of spot for the Daryl Dixon show. And not a lot happening. It's basically just him there's like an overturned boat, like a capsized boat, and he is laying essentially on the bottom of the boat, which is now, facing upwards. Right. And he's just floating along, and that's it. That's all we get. And Yeah, so it, like I said, it happened. They premiered it during the broadcast of it, but it did show up online. So if you can just search for it. It's all over the place. Everybody has a clip of it, so should be pretty easy to find if you only watched via the app, like I did, or via the website or whatever. So streaming.
I just thought it was interesting that they've apparently titled the show Daryl Dixon.
Yeah.
So
I think they said something about that a little bit ago, that that's what they were going with.
Really?
But I've been trying to not pay attention to, once Walking Dead ended, I tried really hard to not pay attention to any of the promos and things for these extra shows, Maggie and Negan and the Daryl show, and all of that. And even the Fear stuff. I didn't want to, I wanted to go in kind of cold. That's why I didn't know the Troy thing and all that other stuff.
Not be spoiled. I get you.
Yeah. So it looked, it's interesting. I think, are we supposed to assume that he floated across the Atlantic Ocean on an upturned boat? I don't know.
Well, the big question I have is, where's Dog?
Yeah, well, Dog is that's what he's using. Dog as a pillow. Dog is laying down and he's leaning on him. And then
also, where on the boat is his motorcycle? I mean, come on.
How did he even do that?
Oh,
we have questions. We have questions, Norman, read us. We have a lot of questions. But they are still non-specific on the date, but they're still saying fall of 2023. So we should see that premiere sometime in the next few months, hopefully.
Yeah, again, I think writer's strike and impending actors and director strikes might put a little monkey
damper on that.
But yeah,
which is probably why they know exactly the date it's going to premiere, but they're being vague now because they can't say, October 1st and then have to push it. If they say fall, that gives them from, September 1st to Thanksgiving pretty much.
Right.
As a sort of open canvas with which to put those. And they haven't said anything about where the second half of Fear is going to fall, so that gives them a lot of space to sort of play with. That's for sure.
Yep.
So we'll see. We will see what we'll see. Not a lot of movement that I've heard of at all with the writer's strike. So it's not looking good.
They're not even talking. So it's not even a case where they're, exchanging ideas. It's just the writers said this is what we want, and the studios have said no. And that's where we're at. So there you go.
Lovely. Well, think good thoughts and hope that it ends soon, folks. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
All right. Anything else we need to discuss before we wrap this all up?
I don't. We've been yakking a long time. I think we put
sure
this guy to bed.
We did. The sun is literally down.
Yes.
I think that says it all. So thanks for coming along on a longer episode. We'll be a little bit shorter next week, just talking about Dead City. So thanks for listening in to the whole episode. We appreciate that. We look forward to chatting with you again next week. But until then, as always, I'm Diana.
And I'm Steve.
Don't forget to always aim for the head.
Because body shots just don't work. So, Diana, if people want to get in touch with us, how would they go about doing that?
There are some great ways to connect with us online and leave us your comments and feedback. So to send us an email, write us at aimfortheheadpodcast@gmail.com. Our Twitter handle is at AFTH Podcast. Pictures and video are always welcome at our Instagram account, Aim for the Head Podcast, all one word. The best way to keep in touch with us is to like our Facebook page. Head to facebook.com/aimfortheheadpodcast to get all of our updates in your feed. Should we just go ahead and, flush the turd and then move on to the better show?
Let's just use that as our coverage for that episode that we just talked about.
All right, so we'll just talk about Dead City and then I'll just take that clip and be like, this is all we want to give you guys. Sorry.